You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Folks, tonight's program comes to you from a report by Nick Guarino from information collected by CAGI members, from my research, and from the research of many other people. Bill Clinton is the greatest criminal ever to occupy the White House. Nixon's crimes were those of a truant schoolboy compared to what Clinton has pulled off. Right now, Bill Clinton is being investigated for possible criminal bank fraud, for possible election fraud, and for obstruction of justice, for events surrounding the possible murder of his own Deputy White House counsel, Vincent Foster. Clinton has also been served with a subpoena requesting his documents in a criminal matter other than Whitewater connections. A special grand jury has now been convened in Little Rock, Arkansas for a criminal indictment of Bill Clinton and a number of his cronies for Whitewater, the looting of Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan, and illegal small business administrative loans. Federal Judge Stephen Reasoner said that a compelling case for the need for a special grand jury was presented to him, and this is the first time in American history any president has ever faced a grand jury. The research of Nick Guarino and many others and personal knowledge indicate that these investigations have only begun to scratch the surface of the corruption and larceny that has characterized Clinton's political career. Based on the thousands of pages of documents that I've studied and the witnesses I've spoken to, I believe Bill Clinton is guilty of extortion and racketeering. It's common knowledge among businessmen in Arkansas that politics in their state is based upon a system of shakedowns. Some examples. Dan Lassiter was a big Clinton campaign contributor. He got the lucrative bond contracts despite the horrendous reputation of his firm and despite his known connections to drug dealers. James McDougal diverted funds from his S&L to pay off Clinton's debts and finance his political ambitions. In turn, he was protected from the regulators. Seth Ward was a director of the S&L that gave huge loans to Clinton and his cronies. He was awarded a $2.7 million bond issue for his Park on Meter Incorporated. Bank fraud. Using Whitewater and other real estate schemes, Clinton and his cronies looted millions from at least one savings and loan in the Small Business Administration. Clinton also used his political power as governor of Arkansas to prevent state regulators from closing the S&L until 4 years after it had essentially become insolvent. Another S&L in almost identical shape was slammed out immediately. The result was the heaviest percentage loss of any savings and loan in the United States. Campaign fraud. Documents that Nick Guarino and others have seen indicate that Clinton has lied about his campaign donations, lied about diversions of funds of his campaign accounts from SBA loans taken out by his cronies and never repaid. Suppressed criminal referrals that were waiting for him at the United States Attorney's Office in Little Rock while he ran for president, and used funds that were looted from an S&L and the SBA to finance his campaign. Tampering with federal witnesses. James McDougal has said publicly that he could sink the Clintons' Whitewater claims, quote, quicker than they could lie about it if I could get in a position so I wouldn't have my head beaten off, unquote. Many witnesses appear to have been paid off in the form of cushy jobs with high salaries or lucrative government deals. One, Vince Foster, has turned up mysteriously dead. Others have turned up dead. In fact, over 28 people closely connected to William Clinton are now dead, ladies and gentlemen. Many have been beaten, threatened, arrested, thrown in jail on trumped-up charges. Destroying documents requested in a criminal investigation. There have been over 80 subpoenas for documents surrounding Whitewater and Clinton. Many documents from Whitewater are missing entirely. Bill and Hillary's partners, the McDougals, claim they hand-delivered all the paperwork to the Clintons. Bill and Hillary, or Billary, say they never received it. Checks are gone, disappeared. Deeds are gone, disappeared. Loan payments, their sources and their recipients have been obscured. And it has just come out that Whitewater documents have been shredded at the Rose Law Firm where Hillary worked. At least 9 criminal prosecutions recommended by the RTC were once turned down because the missing documents made the case too difficult to prove. Obstructing justice, Clinton refused to cooperate with banking officials in their investigation of Whitewater and the savings and loan that financed it, Madison Guarantee. Then he negotiated a special subpoena for himself with his hand-picked Attorney General, Janet Reno, the mastermind of the massacre at Waco, that put the documents in the protective custody of the Justice Department, where no other regulatory agency, let alone the public, is permitted to see them. This is an outrage. Bribing public officials. Evidence shows that officials who cooperated with Clinton in allowing his schemes to continue were repeatedly rewarded with appointments and other special favors. He also used his political power to keep people who had damaging information quiet, to shut them up. Even the police were paid off to provide him with special services and to keep their mouths shut about what those special services were. Accessory to murder. Nick Guarino, myself, William Cooper, and many others are convinced that Deputy White House Counsel Vince Foster was murdered because he knew too much about Whitewater and the other bank and real estate scams. On top of this, it appears that he was having an affair with Hillary Clinton. While his death has been covered up as a suicide, the physical evidence at the crime scene directly contradicts that conclusion. The Clintons and their associates have interfered with the police investigation of Foster's death and have tampered with the evidence. And Hillary has all along been a key player. Hillary was not, ladies and gentlemen, at home baking chocolate chip cookies while Bill committed all the crimes. She was an essential co-conspirator. Through her law firm, under the shield of attorney-client privilege, she committed extraordinary breaches of ethics to protect Clinton and his cronies from the bank regulators. She was intimately involved in Whitewater, deeply involved in Whitewater. She concocted a fraudulent scheme to keep Madison Guarantee open while Clinton and his cronies continued to loot millions from the deposits. And while on hire by the government, she conducted secret out-of-court settlements that protected the Clinton cronies and cost the American taxpayers hundreds of millions, possibly billions of dollars. Clinton already is the first president in American history to have a criminal referral, the last step before an indictment mentioning him personally. Representative James Leach confirmed that this criminal referral was issued. He also confirmed that it has never been made public by the government. The entire investigation is being stonewalled by Clinton and his appointees in the Justice Department, and specifically the mastermind of the massacre at Waco, Texas, Janet Reno. Clinton has surrounded himself by loyal co-conspirators who are willing to do anything to protect him. Anything. And where have we heard that before? Oh, I'm only following orders. Nearly every key position in Washington is now staffed by Clinton appointees. This includes the top people at the Justice Department, the temporary head of the RTC, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and scores of subordinate bureaucrats in the regulatory agencies. These are the very people who should be upholding justice. Instead, they are helping him cover up his crimes, and over 95% of them can be proven Marxists, socialists, globalists. Many of these same Clinton appointees lied to you about Clinton's past. During the 1992 campaign for president, a criminal referral for Clinton had already been waiting process in Arkansas. Clinton's friends in Little Rock suppressed it. If this fact had been made public, Clinton's campaign would have come to a screeching halt. Who was his partner in suppressing all of this information? Not just this, but all of it. The press, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Hart was guilty of having his picture taken next to a beautiful woman on a fishing boat, and all hopes of his reaching the presidency was destroyed as the press published that photograph and made accusations from coast to coast. But Clinton was able to suppress everything, both from the public and the Republican Party, and the press helped him do it because the press mainly is Marxist also. And it's obvious that this was the key to the Clinton election. Of course, with a little help of Pat Buchanan, H. Ross Perot, and the fact that George Bush didn't even run after the Bilderberg Group in 1991 determined that William Clinton would be the next president of the United States. Now Clinton's spin doctors are trying to hide the facts about Whitewater from you. They are lying to you about the bankrupt savings and loan that Clinton and his cronies looted mercilessly to line their own pockets and further their political aims. They are lying to you about the Small Business Administration, which was defrauded for millions by Clinton and his cronies. As governor of Arkansas, Clinton created a tightly spun web of corruption. It is so complex, your mind will boggle at the connections. And over the next 2 nights, I will explain to you how it worked. Clinton regularly flew in the private plane of an influence peddler under investigation for drug dealing. He was later convicted for distributing cocaine. He gave the same man approval to sell hundreds of millions of dollars of Arkansas state bonds, even after he was under investigation for dealing drugs, and later, when he was in prison, dealt with corrupt judges, paid off regulators, used political influence to keep an insolvent savings and loan open, forced at least one state agency to lease offices owned by a Clinton friend at a higher than market rate, and funneled state and crony legal business through Hillary, protecting his crimes with attorney-client privilege. The power and money he was able to acquire just from looting a poor state like Arkansas will send you reeling. Now he and his cronies, which even the press calls the Arkansas Mafia, have taken over the government of the United States of America. Clinton has become the most powerful public figure on earth. This man, this criminal, must be stopped. That's why we're doing this series of programs. That's why Nick Guarino wrote his report. That's why many other people are digging into Whitewater, into Mena, Arkansas, into the deaths of over 28 people closely associated with William Clinton, into the death of Vincent Foster, into the collapse of the savings and loan. Most newspapers and television news teams have not even touched this story. They merely skirt around it. When it was revealed that the Whitewater case was going before a grand jury, most newspapers buried the story, if they covered it at all. Their liberal bias stops them from even beginning to look for the truth. Socialists have never been able to handle the truth, nor have they ever been mixed up in the truth. Nick Guarino spent the better part of 20 years in Arkansas. He ran a multi-million-dollar business there, and he knows how business is done there. He played in the securities and brokerage businesses. He had millions of dollars invested in Arkansas banks and savings and loans. He invested heavily in Arkansas real estate, and he knew Bill Clinton, and he knew that Bill Clinton was corrupt. He also knew that Bill and Hillary would say, when they discovered what he has released to the public, that he is an ex-convict fresh out of Leavenworth, and that's true. He was convicted of a white-collar crime, 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of wire fraud. He claims that he was innocent, and he claims that he was railroaded, but folks, that is irrelevant. The more important point is that Nick Guarino knows what happened in Arkansas. He was incarcerated in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, with others who were involved and who knew what happened in Arkansas. He has thousands of documents from various sources, including news media such as the Washington Times, New York Times, Washington Post, and other leading publications. Bill and Hillary will no doubt smear Nick Guarino and try to discredit him, but they will never sue him. You see, in a court of law, he can depose them and subpoena documents that they want no one to see. He knows where the skeletons are. He was locked up with people who had inside knowledge of Clinton's corruption. Some of them were top players in savings and loan real estate scams of the 1980s. And in a legal battle, if necessary, Nick Guarino can open up the Clintons like a can of worms. I would love for him to do that, and I'm sure that it will probably come to that. You see, this was the greatest country in the world. Crooks like Clinton are selling us down the river. It makes us all sick, and Clinton has got to be stopped. Clinton and his cronies have made their denials. They've hidden their documents. They've silenced their witnesses, but it's not enough. Tonight, tomorrow night, and Friday night, I intend to bust the cover up wide open and expose the crimes Clinton has committed. The one thing they can't fight is the truth. Truth is the mightiest power in the universe, and it will destroy Bill Clinton. It is the wishes of Nick Guarino. It is the wishes of the American people who care deeply about this country. Whitewater is part of a scheme to hustle millions from banks and savings and loans. And from CAGI investigations, it goes directly to the Central Intelligence Agency, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and G2 Army Intelligence. The first thing that Nick Guarino wants you to understand about Whitewater is that the land was not the main scam. The real crime is the looting of banks, savings and loans, the Small Business Administration, and the Arkansas Development Finance Authority for millions of dollars by Bill Clinton and his cronies. Whitewater was just one of the vehicles they used to make this happen. For the most part, the scheme was a series of land and loan deals. It involved many of the political and business elite of Arkansas. Bill Clinton, who as governor was the most powerful person in the state, he held the power to grant or refuse business rights, appoint judges and other key public servants, and to hand out lucrative state contracts, such as the bond deals for Dan Lassiter and the legal work to Hillary's law firm. He also controlled the purse strings of business in Arkansas through the Arkansas Development Finance Authority. Clinton received huge backdoor campaign contributions in return for political protection and other favors. James McDougal, former Clinton economic aide and the Clintons' partner in Whitewater. McDougal also was the co-owner of several other shady real estate ventures, and we'll tell you about that later. He was also the owner of the Kingston Bank and Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan. Clinton, McDougal, and other cronies looted Madison for millions. Steve Smith, another former aide and longtime Clinton friend. In 1978, Clinton, McDougal, and Smith decided real estate was Clinton's best bet for raising money because the governor would be less likely to have a conflict. Smith became president of the first bank Clinton tried to loot and was involved in several real estate schemes with Clinton cronies. He was recently subpoenaed in connection with Whitewater and Madison Guarantee. Jim Guy Tucker, Clinton's lieutenant governor and the current governor of Arkansas. Clinton handpicked Tucker to succeed him. Tucker not only received a $1 million fraudulent loan from the SBA, but was also intimately involved in several of the real estate schemes. He was a partner in the Kingston Bank, which the FDIC slapped for giving out too many big loans to Clinton and his friends. Tucker is currently under investigation by the FBI and RTC. His records were recently subpoenaed. David Hale, a former Little Rock municipal judge appointed by Clinton. He made millions of dollars of fraudulent loans to Clinton's cronies through the Small Business Administration. At least one of the loans directly benefited Clinton. Hale says that Clinton pressured him to make the loans. Clinton says he can't recall this conversation. Hale is now under criminal indictment for defrauding the Small Business Administration. Seth Ward, the father-in-law of Hillary's law partner, Webster Hubbell. Ward participated in some of the real estate ventures that went bust, approved a number of bad loans at Madison Guarantee as a director of the savings and loan, and defaulted on a $600,000 loan to the savings and loan himself. The federal government cited Ward's default as one of the worst abuses at Madison, but Hillary Clinton and her law firm, while representing the government, got the loan forgiven. David Lassiter, a millionaire businessman, gambler, and bond dealer. Lassiter's firm was a major source of brokered deposits to Madison, which was the major source of its explosive deposit growth. He donated huge amounts of money to Clinton's campaigns, paid off a drug debt for Clinton's brother Roger, took Bill on frequent trips in his private jet, and paid handsome legal bills to Hillary's firm. Clinton awarded Lassiter the lucrative license to sell Arkansas state bonds, even though he had been informed of Lassiter's corruption. Clinton continued to pass lucrative bond deals to Lassiter after the bond dealer was under investigation for distributing cocaine to friends and business associates. Later, in two separate cases, the regulators sought $3.3 million and then $4.6 million in damages from Lassiter. In both cases, ladies and gentlemen, Hillary got him off the hook for only $200,000 in the first suit and $250,000 in the second. The only problem? Hillary's firm didn't represent Lassiter. They represented the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Did you hear that? Hillary's firm didn't represent Lassiter. They represented the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And finally, Hillary Clinton herself. After Bill became governor, her earnings as an attorney skyrocketed from $30,000 a year to $400,000. She repeatedly represented both state and federal regulators against her own friends and clients. These were severe conflicts of interest that should have immediately disqualified Hillary, but she never disclosed them. Don't go away. I'll be right back. During the Clinton years, it was casino time in the Arkansas financial institutions. Anything went. The worst abuses took place at the savings and loans because they were more unregulated than banks, and not just in Arkansas. It was part of a well-planned destruction of the economy of the United States of America. First, hitting the unregulated savings and loans, and next is the unregulated banks. This drew unscrupulous business people looking for quick money. It also made savings and loans the favorite raiding place for politicians. The politicians granted the state charters. They appointed the few regulators who did oversee the S&Ls, and it's no accident so many politicians have turned to savings and loans for financing. The mess they created may end up costing us over $1 trillion. Whitewater was the first venture of this type by Bill Clinton. It is an early blueprint of a series of real estate ventures developed by Clinton cronies. They all involved huge loans from savings and loans and banks owned by Clinton's pals. On paper, all of them supposedly lost money. You'll soon see that the only people who lost money were the taxpayers. If you're a taxpayer. Clinton and the insiders took out fortunes. The way deals like this work, folks, is simple. First, you locate a piece of property. Let's say it's 100 acres worth $75,000. You then get one of your real estate friends to value it at $150,000. You borrow 80% of that from the savings and loan, where another of your friends is a director. Already, you've raised $120,000, which is 80% of $150,000 from a property worth only $75,000. You might make some minimal improvements, like dividing the property into lots and bulldozing a few roads through it. If you're smart, you get the state to pay for it. Now, you can say that $150,000 piece of property is worth $2.5 million, and that lets you borrow even more money. If you want still more cash, you just arrange a few sham sales at inflated prices to other friends. Since the value of your property has increased so dramatically, your friend at the savings and loan can then approve an even larger loan. One property that we looked into, for example, was run up from $75,000 to almost $4 million in about a year. It's a gigantic, incredible Ponzi scheme. Whitewater had many of these elements. First, it was in the middle of nowhere. Nick Guarino has stated that he wishes that he could show you this piece of property. It was almost totally uninhabited. Even 15 years after the Clintons bought the property, all there is to show for their development is a couple of mobile homes, a handful of fishing shacks, and a house or two. Indeed, the biggest amount of money spent improving the Whitewater property was a $150,000 road that stretched 2 miles through the forest. And guess what, dear sheeple? It was paid for by the state of Arkansas. The property was also mortgaged for far higher than its value. The Clintons and their partners purchased it with 100% borrowed money, nothing down. At times, lots were sold and resold without recording deeds, irregardless of the fact that they had been sold before. There are conflicting reports about profits and losses, and the money, dear listeners, has disappeared. 2 other ventures Clinton cronies were involved in, Campobello and Castle Grande, worked even better than Whitewater, and you don't hear anything about these. They were purchased for a few $100,000, but the loans against them ran into the millions. And remember, I've already told you, the crux of the matter is not the real estate. You ain't heard nothing yet. These, Campobello and Castle Grande, were purchased for a few $100,000, but the loans against them ran into the tens of millions. And Bill and Hillary Clinton have stated, quote, "We don't know anything about Whitewater," unquote. And P.T. Barnum said, and I quote, "There's a sucker born every minute," unquote. Bill and Hillary claim they were passive investors in Whitewater. They would have you believe they were innocent dupes in a series of unfortunate schemes perpetrated on them by unscrupulous cads. Nick Guarino and the Hour of the Time intend to demonstrate to you that the exact opposite is true. Number one, it was Bill Clinton himself who masterminded the schemes in connection with the intelligence community with its roots in the Central Intelligence Agency. Number two, Hillary, through her legal connections, was a key player in much of the fraud. And three, the Clintons and their friends benefited to the tune of millions of dollars. One thing you have to understand is that the political machine in Arkansas is one of the most corrupt systems in the nation. It's almost impossible to be in Arkansas politics and not be corrupt. And it is heavily under the control of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry of the Southern jurisdiction. Now, let me give you 2 examples of what we're talking about here. One Arkansas governor insured every concrete and steel bridge in the state for fire. Fire, mind you. Every concrete and steel bridge in the state for fire. Now, who, dear listeners, do you think owned the insurance company? Another governor, up on fraud charges, fired the judge. He replaced him with a town drunk who promptly dismissed the grand jury that was about to hand down an indictment. Hallelujah, Arkansas. That's just politics as usual in Arkansas. Bill was just following in the footsteps of his illustrious predecessors. But you see, he had an extra incentive. The job of governor of Arkansas pays a dispiriting $35,000 a year. Clinton was not independently wealthy. He was a small-town boy with huge political ambitions. He was picked by the power structure. His mentor was the man who wrote Tragedy and Hope. He was sent to England, to Oxford, under a Rhodes Scholarship, to learn how to lead the sheeple into the New World Order, into one world government. He's an Anglophile. He believes in British Israelism. He wanted to hobnob with the rich and the famous. And even with Hillary's law salary, he didn't have enough money. He needed cash, lots of it, and by the late 70s, he had already hatched a brilliant plan to raise money by taking it from someone else. and he was helped by the elite to dirty his hands. For in order to have their help to rise into power amongst those who call themselves illumined, you must be dirty, and they must hold the dirt. Madison Guarantee was pillaged to finance Whitewater and Clinton's mafia and to further the aims of the destruction of the United States of America, along with all the other savings and loans in this country. On paper, the Clintons and their partners, the McDougalls, said they would convert this raw forest land into a vacation retirement community with dozens of lots. They said it would be a thriving new community. They bought Whitewater with nothing down and then borrowed huge sums of money against it and funneled huge sums through it. First, they borrowed the $20,000 down payment from Union Bank, which was later repaid with a new loan from Union Bank, taken out by Clinton crony and present Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker and McDougal. Then they borrowed another $183,000 from the Citizens Bank of Flippin. According to real estate agents and sales of neighboring property, the value of the land was supposed to be one-third of that, but by inflating the purchase price, you can borrow more against it. Later, Hillary got another $30,000 from Bank of Kingston, using part of the same property that was already the collateral for the Flippin loan. Another $20,000 came from Security Bank of Paragould, which Bill used to pay off part of Hillary's loan. An additional $110,000 came from the diversion of an illegal SBA loan to McDougal's wife, so they had already borrowed $363,000 on property worth somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. Later, indeterminate amounts appear to have been funneled into or through Whitewater from Madison and its shell companies. Around the time Whitewater Development was formed, McDougal, along with other Clinton cronies, including Jim Guy Tucker, Arkansas's present governor, bought the Bank of Kingston. Steve Smith was appointed president. Within days of the purchase, McDougal, Tucker, and Smith began using the bank to finance Whitewater and Bill Clinton's political mafia. The bank loaned far more than the legal maximum credit limit to any one borrower. All the loans were going to prominent out-of-towners, political big shots who did not live in or around Kingston. Huge loans were going to Clinton cronies, including executives at major corporations like Walmart and Tyson Foods. Both Walmart and Tyson were large Clinton campaign contributors and recipients of juicy political favors. Hillary was on their board of directors. The solvency of the bank was threatened. It got so bad, ladies and gentlemen, that the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation began an investigation. In 1983, both Marlin Jackson, Arkansas State Banking Commissioner, and the FDIC demanded that Kingston stop making these loans. The FDIC said the loans threatened the stability of the bank. Clinton and his cronies were notified in writing and ordered to repay their loans. They then switched their scheme to savings and loans where the regulators couldn't get them. Soon after, McDougal bought Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan. Jackson, the regulator who stopped the loans to Clinton from Kingston, says he felt McDougal did this to escape the heavy regulation over the banks. The savings and loans were far less regulated. Quote, I've often thought that the reason he began using Madison Guarantee was because he had found that he couldn't do what he wanted with his bank, unquote, said Jackson. Madison was a tiny savings and loan in a tiny town. Its prospects looked dim, except Governor Clinton then intervened. He gave Madison approval to open a branch in Little Rock. This was highly prized among savings and loans. It meant Madison had instant access to a market that was literally 1,000 times bigger. Later, Clinton sheltered Madison from regulatory scrutiny. Madison quickly became a large savings and loan, attracting $120 million in deposits. It did so by offering some of the highest interest rates to savers in the United States. You may recall the mid-1980s when Arkansas Savings and Loans sat on top of the list of highest interest-paying savings institutions. Madison was a leader in the race to attract the most deposits by offering high interest rates. It also began a series of fraudulent loan practices and deals with the political elite of Arkansas. Madison's furious expansion attracted federal regulators who stated in 1984 that Madison was in jeopardy from unsafe and unsound lending practices. According to the regulatory complaints, Madison made $17 million in loans to insiders, officers and their family, and politically prominent Arkansas citizens, including Bill Clinton. Jim Guy Tucker received over $1 million. Steve Smith received at least $65,000. Seth Ward received at least $600,000. In most cases, these businesses eventually failed, but Bill Clinton and his cronies kept on getting more loans for bigger and better amounts. And again, as I said, the money disappeared. Where did it go? I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, you look into Mena, Arkansas, and ask Ollie North. At times, tens of thousands of dollars were run through the Whitewater account at Madison in transactions that were apparently completely unrelated to Whitewater sales or expenses. Furthermore, huge overdrafts were mysteriously covered with deposits from various Madison subsidiaries and other McDougal corporations. Drug money. They used shell corporations to bury the transactions. The way they were able to do this was by using shell corporations, companies whose only purpose was to funnel funds out of the bank and into their pockets. These shell corporations were part of the focus of the RTC's first criminal referral, which named Clinton in 1992. The document outlines dozens of questionable loan transactions involving several Arkansas banks and 12 corporations affiliated with or doing business with Madison. Principals of the corporations include the Clintons, the McDougals, current Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker, and other cronies. This document was suppressed by Clinton's machine during the presidential campaign. During the first half of 1985, Whitewater issued 10 checks for more than $70,000. Several were written to the Bank of Cherry Valley, where Clinton had a campaign account. Unable to obtain the bank records, the RTC could not determine if the checks were deposited in the account. 5 of the checks issued by Whitewater, totaling more than $60,000, were overdrafts that eventually were covered by funds from other alleged shell corporations or from Madison Financial Corporation, the S&L's wholly owned real estate subsidiary. One $30,000 check was issued on Whitewater's account to McDougal with the notation, quote, loan repayment, unquote. Though the RTC found no records of any loan from McDougal. More money laundering. That check resulted in an overdraft that was covered by a deposit of $30,000 from Madison Financial Corporation. In April 1985, according to S&L documents, Madison Financial Corporation deposited $30,000 directly into Whitewater's account as a prepayment on a 1985 bonus to McDougal, Madison Financial Corporation's president. Some of the money that went through the alleged shell corporations to Whitewater came from bank loans. Those corporations were created legally, but appear to have no business purpose whatsoever. Clearly, they were established purely to funnel money out of the bank. More money laundering. At times, the purpose is blatant. Among the shell companies cited in the first referral were ventures named Tucker, Smith, McDougal. Smith, Tucker, McDougal, and a third named Smith McDougal. Could anything, dear listeners, be a more obvious sham than that? Smith, McDougal, and Tucker were 3 of Clinton's aides and underlings. They, with Clinton as the obvious silent partner, hatched various sham real estate deals to raise money for Clinton. For example, the Castle Grande trailer park to be near Little Rock was a grand scheme that ran up at least $2 million in loans, plus another $1 million for a sewer plant to service the development. Nothing was ever developed. It's now an empty tract of land. There were no improvements. The land is littered with mattresses and old refrigerators. The land, according to some sources, is worth about $70,000. Where did the other $3 million go to? I suggest you look into Mena, Arkansas, and ask Ollie North. Besides loans to Whitewater, the savings and loan funneled money to its owner's wife. One of the ways this was done was through a subsidiary, Madison Marketing. Madison Marketing handled $1.53 million of the thrift's business over a 3-year period. The firm was owned by Susan McDougal, wife of the savings and loans owner. Her company apparently did no actual marketing for the bank. She merely collected commissions and borrowed money. According to the RTC, the evidence indicates that Madison Marketing was a sham company that performed no actual marketing services. They simply paid the bills of other firms and added their own 15% markup. In turn, Madison Marketing funneled money to Whitewater and to Clinton, and this is illegal. Madison funds were used to pay Clinton's past campaign debts. Madison employees were urged to donate money to Clinton. The S&L's officers told them the savings and loan would pay them back. Of course, it is illegal for savings and loan funds to be used in this manner. We will probably never know how much Clinton made from this. It had the potential to quickly reach tens of thousands of dollars and maybe millions. One thing that's known for sure, ladies and gentlemen, is that in 1985, at Clinton's request, Jim McDougal hosted a cocktail party at Madison headquarters to help Clinton pay off a $50,000 campaign debt. About $30,000 was raised. At least one of the listed donors denies ever writing a check. The donor was a 24-year-old college student. He supposedly gave $3,000. It later turned out that his father had signed the check, not he, and that it came from his father. Who was the father, ladies and gentlemen? A politician named Charles Peacock. Peacock at first told reporters he knew nothing about the check. Later, he admitted he had signed it in his son's name and told them simply, quote, "I'm a politician, and as a politician I have the prerogative to lie whenever I want," unquote. Most of the records of these donations have disappeared. What few documents remain have convinced federal investigators that at least some of the money may have come directly from Madison. Many of the donations were in the form of Madison cashier checks, usually written in the name of an individual in his account. 3 months before McDougal helped Clinton cover his debt, Clinton had appointed a new state regulator in charge of savings and loans. The appointee, handpicked by McDougal, turns out to have been a Little Rock lawyer who had previously represented McDougal's savings and loans. Bank investigators are also trying to find out what happened to an undisclosed amount of money that went directly from Madison to Whitewater. The Resolution Trust Corporation, a federal agency, has sent a whole package of criminal referrals to the Justice Department recommending further investigation into these donations. Good luck, as they are in the hands of the instigator of the Waco massacre, Janet Reno. So far, no one has been able to piece together just how much Bill Clinton and his friends benefited from the diversion of funds from Madison and Whitewater. The transactions are muddled, and what documents haven't been destroyed are being withheld from the public, many of them by Janet Reno, the brains behind the murder of the congregation of Branch Davidian in Waco, Texas. But we know Madison failed in 1989 with a shortfall of $47 to $68 million. It was owned by Jim McDougal, Clinton's former aide, business partner, and fundraiser. Clinton knowingly kept the S&L open, using his political influence, and continued to give favors to McDougal. As McDougal put it, quote, "Bill never turned me down on something I asked for," unquote. Furthermore, as you'll see in a moment, Hillary handled Madison's legal entanglements with the regulators. It was due to her and Bill's influence that Madison was not shut down when its insolvency was first discovered. The ties, ladies and gentlemen, are simply too close for coincidence. Much of the paper trail has been buried forever in what has been called atrocious record-keeping. But the evidence shows that Bill and Hillary, Billary, and their cronies were able to swindle millions from this one savings and loan. Don't miss tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless you all. You're listening to The Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
You're listening to The Hour of the Time, and I'm Pooh.
Thank you, baby. Well, folks, that was an entertaining Radio Freemasonry episode there. But unfortunately for them, our Cadgy man in New Orleans kicked their butt. And when he started asking the right questions, pursuing the correct line, they were reduced to I love it. I love it. Just absolutely love it. You keep listening to the Hour of the Time, and you'll know who killed John F. Kennedy, and you'll know who's trying to destroy all the sovereign nations of the world, and you'll know who's just trying to destroy all existing religions. You won't have any doubts in your mind whatsoever. And to our Caddy representative in New Orleans, well done, my friend. Well done. Okay, starting Monday, folks, we're going to be playing reruns every night while we move the studio. The studio is the last thing that we're moving, and we've got to move it and set it up. We've also got to set up our television facilities. So I don't know how long we're going to be doing reruns, but we're going to be playing the best of the Hour of the Time for as long as it takes to get all that stuff done. So, be patient, folks, and while we're doing that, we're going to keep the seeds open. People are really taking advantage of that seed offer. Remember, it's $48 for listeners, $40 for CAGI members, and we're going to make something else available here. We're going to take the pantry unit. It's 3 months supply for one person, or 1.5 months for two people. 3 months supply for one person, or 1.5 months for two people. Dehydrated, nitrogen-packed in enameled cans. It's 4 cases, 87 pounds shipping weight, and we're going to make that $300 for listeners, $290 for CAGI members. The retail price is $380, folks. So that's $300 for listeners, $290 for CAGI members. The retail price is $380. We'll keep the seeds open, and we'll also make available the emergency unit, 1 month supply for one person. 1 month supply for one person. It's 5 cases. It weighs 38 pounds. The retail price is $213. We'll make that $190 for listeners, $180 for CAGI members. Remember, these offers will be open the whole time that we're doing the reruns. I'll repeat it again tomorrow night. After that, it will not be repeated because it's not on the tapes that we're going to be playing, so write it down now, folks, and don't forget it. I'll try to repeat it later in the program, but not right now. Just remember, folks, all this stuff about the CIA, the Mafia, the Mossad, these are just smoke screens for the real people. Castro didn't do it. No, sir. It's the interlocking secret societies known collectively as the Illuminati that murdered John Fitzgerald Kennedy. All the symbolism is there. All the links are there. All the stone penises are there. Everything is there that you need to know. The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Southern Jurisdiction, B'nai B'rith, the ADL, which has links to the Mossad, the higher echelons of the Mafia, which was set up by Giuseppe Mazzini as an arm of the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, and I could go on and on and on, but those of you who have been listening to this program, you know what's happening, you know who's bringing it about, and you know what's going to come of it. And if we don't get smart and band together and quit following these little smoke screens and chasing our tails around the park, folks, they're going to kick our ass. You understand what I'm telling you? So you better wake up. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Was Rhodes Scholar Clinton or country bumpkin McDougal the mastermind of Whitewater? Billary, that's Bill and Hillary, have tried to make it appear that James McDougal cooked up the Whitewater scheme and lured them into it. They claim they were passive investors. Come on, folks. Come on, Billary. You guys can do much better than that if you just put your minds to it, can't you? McDougal is a country bumpkin with average brains and little education, a perfect patsy, and so far he fits the bill just right. Falls right into his niche, doesn't he? He's now broke and failing health and living on $750 a month in a broken-down apartment. Trying to tell me that this is the man who scammed hundreds of millions of dollars, and he has nothing? Bill Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar, a graduate with honors from Georgetown University and a member of the Mensa Society. He's a multi-millionaire who has risen to the most powerful position in the world with the power elite of British Israelism and the Eastern establishment behind him. Doesn't look like it, does it? But they are. See, if they weren't, he wouldn't be where he is today. He's famous, ladies and gentlemen, for his deal-making, which means promising anything he has to get his bills passed. So who do you think scammed who? And if you really think that Bill Clinton is the mastermind, you'd better think again. No king has ever really been the king. The Whitewater hustle came from the power behind William Clinton. William Clinton is the patsy, folks. The scheme was so blatant it's almost difficult to believe, which makes me point to the fact that this was intended to dirty William Clinton so much that he could bring down the presidency and turn the American people against constitutional government. The Clintons put up no money for Whitewater. No money. They had no money. The money came from the real power and the real brains. They invested next to nothing, and even that was borrowed. Their losses are zero, folks. Forget the $68,900 loss they claim. We'll show you a bit later it's entirely a fabrication. And they're telling us McDougal, who used to be a Clinton aide, just gave them a 50% deal in a lucrative land investment for nothing. Just a little favor for a friend? Bullshit. Clinton put up no money, no time, no expertise, not a single contribution. That's not the real world, folks. In a legitimate project, you never take anyone on for free and give them 50% of their business. You put them in because they give you some benefit, or they buy it. But this was not a legitimate project, you see. The whole point of Whitewater and Clinton's and his cronies' other land loan deals was to milk the depositors and taxpayers of millions of dollars, all the while showing a loss or minimal income to the IRS and the public, and to dirty Bill Clinton for what was to come later. The Clintons and their partners, the McDougals, operated Madison Guarantee as their personal piggy bank. They looted depositors' money to pay off Bill Clinton's personal campaign debts and to raise money for his campaign to become president of the United States. After stealing as much money as they could, Clinton and his partners watched as Whitewater went broke. It was the typical Florida swamp deal of the 30s. Nope, it was worse. And don't forget, folks, it didn't just happen here. It happened to savings and loans all across the United States as part of a very careful plan of milking money from the sheeple to finance drugs for arms to bring down this nation and other nations. The Clintons claim they lost $68,900 on Whitewater. If their former partner, James McDougal, and their real estate agent, Chris Wade, are to be believed, they didn't lose a penny. As McDougal put it, I put money into it. Money was owed me. I don't remember them putting anything in. Quote, I could sink it quicker than they could lie about it if I could get in a position so I wouldn't have my head beaten off, unquote, said McDougal. Quote, and Bill knows that, unquote. Why wasn't this so-called loss ever recorded on Bill and Hillary's income tax return? Bill says it was just an oversight. Well, that's very interesting, coming from a man who took a $2 deduction for his used underwear donated to the Salvation Army. Hash marks and all. Hillary Clinton certainly didn't forget to take a $5,133 deduction for interest on a Whitewater loan she didn't even pay. What's more, the Clintons did list a $1,000 capital gain on their taxes for Whitewater. So what happened to the $68,000 they supposedly lost? Why wasn't that on there? Because they knew that that would ring bells. Between 1978 and 1982, Whitewater generated sales of almost $300,000. Where did all that money go, dear sheeple? Even their real estate agent, Chris Wade, can't understand the $68,900 loss. Wade says, quote, "I don't see where they could have lost money," unquote. He also said that Whitewater appeared to generate enough income from land sales to cover its expenses and that he regularly deposited money from lot payments into Whitewater's account. Hidden profits, laundered money, disappearing cash, fraud and deceit appear to permeate every event in the Whitewater Clinton saga, and in fact, Clinton's whole life. Consider an early sale of a Whitewater lot in 1980. The property in question was their prime lot, 28 acres overlooking the White River. The Clintons and the McDougals supposedly paid $882.61 per acre for this property, 3 times what it was worth, according to one real estate expert, which works out to $24,713.08. But when they sold the lot to real estate agent Chris Wade in 1980, they recorded a $2,000 price for the entire 28 acres on the tax stamps. Wade says he paid $32,000 for the property. He resold it to a Texas couple for about $43,000. By the Clintons' reckoning, the net on the transaction works out to a $22,713.08 loss. But if Wade is telling the truth, and the numbers certainly seem to bear him out more than Billary, the Clintons made a $7,280 profit. Where did that money go? A few years later, Wade was involved in another unusual transaction with the Clintons and McDougals. He wanted to buy Whitewater's 24 remaining lots, but he did not have cash. Quote, "I had an airplane and no money, and they had the lots," unquote, Wade said. He ended up giving the plane to McDougall and assuming $35,000 of Whitewater's $100,000 debt. McDougall sold the plane to Seth Ward, who turned around and sold it back to one of McDougall's shell companies, which in turn borrowed the money from Madison, and McDougall pocketed the proceeds. Billary, let me see if we've got this right. Let me see. Let me just sort of check this out here. Let's talk about this and see how it sounds. Bill and Hillary, you buy a piece of property. The bank lends you more than it's worth. You claim you sold off all the best lots for 10 cents on the dollar and the worst lots for 35 cents on the dollar, while your real estate agent is saying you had $300,000 in sales. Of course, you don't keep track of any of the transactions. You don't record the deeds with the courthouse, and the deeds disappear. You can't find the checks that paid the interest on the loans. Your accounts on the project had possibly $1 million or more run through them over a 10-year period. But let me see. Oh, that's right. You say the money's gone, and you don't have it. How is this possible? No, folks, the numbers don't add up. It doesn't make any sense. That money went somewhere, and Bill, Hillary, and their cronies, and others, unnamed, were the beneficiaries. If you could follow the money, a lot of it you could follow directly to the Drugs for Guns operation run by Ollie North and others, and to the Central Intelligence Agency. Hillary was a key player in Bill's schemes. Hillary Clinton claims she has no knowledge of the savings and loans in McDougal's handling of Whitewater. You're going to love this part, folks. But McDougal says it was always Hillary he contacted to discuss the development, and there are allegations that she had power of attorney, quote, to manage and conduct all matters, unquote, related to Whitewater. She was personally retained by the Savings and Loan as their attorney, represented them before state regulators, and she was on a $2,000 a month retainer to Madison. But she says she has no knowledge of the savings and loans in McDougal's handling of Whitewater. And Santa Claus is coming back tomorrow. Hillary was a senior partner in the biggest, most prestigious law firm in Arkansas. She got the job when Bill became governor, and from that time on, Clinton funneled huge amounts of state legal work through her firm. For example, her firm got much of the lucrative legal work for the issuance of state bonds that benefited many of their clients. They got the legal work from Madison. They represented the regulators, even against some of their own clients, and they handled the legal work for Lassiter's Bond Company. All unethical, all illegal, all criminal, all, in fact, felonies. If you wanted to do business with the state of Arkansas, it was no longer necessary to make payoffs with $100 bills in paper bags. You just went and retained Hillary Clinton. The money you paid the Clintons to do a government deal was no longer an illegal payoff, but a legal bill. Even better, it's protected under attorney-client privilege, and you can't get better than that. The benefits of retaining Hillary were often ends to the most lucrative government deals, such as the Arkansas Development Bond issues. Over the decade Bill was governor, Hillary became a multi-millionaire. And it's no wonder. Little partner in a law firm. And how did Hillary and Bill keep regulators from closing an insolvent savings and loan? Well, let's look at that, folks. The regulators knew that Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan was insolvent as far back as 1985. But Bill and Hillary used their political influence to keep the Madison open, and they succeeded for years. After all, the regulators were appointed by Governor Bill Clinton, who was their boss. They did the right thing to keep their jobs. They backed off. What some people won't do for a piddly-ass little job that don't pay anything, they'll sell their whole country down the drain. All their neighbors and friends, people who invested, had their savings in there. But these regulators didn't care. They wanted to keep their little old stinking job. Probably got paid $20,000 a year, which ain't chump change in this day and age, folks. I hope that doesn't insult too many of you, but it's true. It's absolutely true. I never could figure out why people consent to be the slave of somebody else working for chump change when they have the same brain as everybody else who uses their brain. Who's the boss? Who create companies, who employ other people. How about that? A 1986 audit by the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, FHLBB, portrays Madison as financially reckless, rife with conflicts and on the brink of collapse. As they put it, folks, quote, the problems discussed in this report conflicts of interest, high-risk land developments, poor asset quality, rapid growth, inadequate income and net worth, low liquidity, security speculation, excessive compensation, and poor records and controls constitute a significant threat to the continued existence of the institution, unquote. My. Furthermore, regulators noted that at least $17 million had been loaned out to friends and family at McDougal, who, along with Clinton and his cronies, used Madison as their personal piggy bank. Of course, they all deny any participation or knowledge of this now, and all claim that they don't have the money. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton was claiming to regulators that the savings and loan was solvent, yet she claimed she never knew anything about the savings and loan. But it's on record. She even put together a stock offering, which the state of Arkansas approved, to bring in millions of new suckers' dollars, and this socialist Marxist twit has you all convinced that she's for the poor person and she's going to elevate your lifestyle and make you all happy participants in the New World Order, the new socialist state. Haven't you caught on yet? Marxists always promise you the moon and steal your underpants. And she's a screaming Marxist. In essence, Hillary was proposing that the people of Arkansas be convinced to use their hard-earned money to shore up an insolvent savings and loan. The woman who claimed she didn't know anything about the savings and loan. The scheme was so outrageous that even Hillary couldn't sneak it by the FHLBB, who killed the deal, and it's on record. 4 years later, the federal government called the plan Hillary tried to push through fraudulent. But do you think that they prosecuted her? No. If this was you or me, where would we be right now? Why, we'd be in cell block C. And Clinton became president of the United States. And then there's the little matter of Madison's $2,000 a month payoff to Hillary. Madison guaranteed that Hillary knew nothing about. Her husband was governor of Arkansas. She worked for the biggest, most prestigious law firm in the state. Oh, we said that, didn't we? Hillary was the ideal conduit for political favors and payoffs. When Bill did a favor for someone, the payback could go to Hillary. When the state needed outside legal representation, the work could go to Hillary's firm, and millions of dollars were funneled through her law firm. Madison Guarantee Savings and Loan is just one example. According to James McDougall, early one morning about 9 years ago, he answered a knock at his office door, and he found a winded and sweating Bill Clinton dressed for a jog on the steps. Clinton was then struggling to retire campaign debts for his gubernatorial run and to make ends meet on his $35,000 salary. The governor expressed concerns about his family's financial condition. He told McDougall things were tight and asked him to send some business to Hillary through her law firm. Quote, I asked Clinton how much he needed, says McDougall, unquote, and Clinton said, quote, about $2,000 a month, unquote. Later that day, McDougall directed an executive at Madison to immediately put Hillary Clinton of the Rose Law Firm on retainer for that amount. Quote, I hired Hillary Clinton because Bill came in whimpering that he needed help, said McDougall. The bank said he had no specific legal work in mind when he hired Hillary, unquote. McDougall said he recalled the event vividly because he was so uncomfortable during the meeting, not over the retainer issue, but because throughout the conference, Clinton sat sweating at McDougall's new leather desk chair, an expensive gift from his wife. Ain't being rich tough, folks? The house that Hillary built. It was Hillary who built the first model home in Whitewater. Although the land was already mortgaged by Whitewater through the Citizens Bank of Flippin, Hillary took out a $30,000 personal loan from the Bank of Kingston, also controlled by McDougall, putting nothing down. McDougall couldn't borrow the money because, being an owner of the bank, it would arouse suspicions among the regulators. Whitewater Development Corporation could not borrow the money itself because its only asset, the land, was pledged as collateral for the current loans. But Hillary, oh yes, Hillary was able to get the loan and pledge it to Whitewater, which then paid the interest and the principal. The banking commissioner in Arkansas has said this loan violated state laws and probably federal laws as well. Although Whitewater was paying the loan off, and Hillary had never paid Whitewater for the lot, she built the model home and then sold it at least twice, folks. She sold this thing twice. One source suggests more. Whitewater essentially gave her the property. She paid no taxes on this gift, but she did take the interest payments off on her income tax to the tune of $5,133. The Clintons claimed this was a mistake, but since the statute of limitations is long past, Billary say they are not required to pay it. And why am I talking about all these taxes that they paid or didn't pay? Simply, folks, they have declared that they are taxpayers, and since they volunteered, they're obligated to pay it. At one point, she appears to have sold the property 2 days before she had bought it back from the last sale. Investigators haven't been able to track the profits on these sales. Oh, no. You see, the records were lost. You try that. The sales were done on unrecorded contracts. Not only were the records lost, but the contracts were unrecorded. The deeds were not recorded with the courthouse, and the deeds have disappeared. So there's no place regulators can go to get a reliable record of the transactions. All we have is the Clintons' word. And try selling that property today. It's a title company's nightmare. Try to get title insurance on something that's been through that kind of a mill. Some pieces of property being sold 2 or 3 or 4 times. Madison guarantees fast and loose loans to Bill Clinton and his cronies could never have gone on as long as they did without Hillary. The bank examiners got on to Madison as early as 1984. They discovered the insider loans to Clinton's and his political cronies, as well as family and friends of McDougal. In fact, a 1996 report by the Federal Home Loan Board painted a grim picture of Madison's prospects. It detailed what it said were widespread abuses by the thrift and risky land deals for which the economic justification is questionable. The viability of the institution is jeopardized through the institution's current investment and lending practices in real estate development projects. Oh, these bureaucrats can sure come up with words, can't they? But Bill and Hillary used their political leverage to keep the state regulators away, and it wasn't until 4 years after the first signs of impending collapse that state regulators closed the operation finally. At a loss, dear listeners, to taxpayers of $47 to $68 million, and since everything's missing, that's a guess. Hillary represented Madison through her law firm. It was her firm that presented a rosy picture of the savings and loans prospects to the regulators. She then put together a bailout plan. It was a stock offering to bring in millions of new suckers, dollars, and recapitalize the savings and loan. They were looking for sheeple. Hillary's plan was reviewed by Securities Commissioner Barbara Bassett Schaefer, a Clinton appointee. Mrs. Schaefer had been on the job for 3 months. Before her appointment, she had been an attorney at a firm that represented Madison. She'd even done a small amount of legal work herself for the S&L. McDougal says she was his choice to fill the spot. They were trolling for sheeple, and the sheeple were biting. Despite Madison's terrible financial condition, Mrs. Schaefer approved Hillary's plans. Fortunately, it never went through. Madison could not come up with the capital to get it past the feds. Otherwise, thanks to Hillary, Madison could have lost millions more. It was at this time that Mrs. Clinton apparently also became involved with bank examiner Sarah J. Worsham. Mrs. Worsham had written a devastating report on Madison that could have shut the thrift down. In her January 1984 report to the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, she said Madison had engaged in, quote, unsound lending practices, unquote, and had improperly booked profits. What an understatement. With a report like this, she could have shut Madison down, but she didn't. Oh, no. According to the Washington Times, within months of the report, Madison hired Mrs. Worsham under her maiden name of Hawkins as a senior vice president at $65,000 a year. In addition, she got a $5,000 unsecured loan, a $500 a month expense account, and yearly bonuses of $2,000, plus, dear sheeple, a Rolls-Royce Bentley sedan to just tool around town in, cruise down to the Sonic Drive-In in my Rolls. Yes, sir. And Bill Clinton says, enough of this whitewater stuff. It's taking me away from the important business of running the nation. Don't you mean ripping off the nation, Bill? Just like you ripped off Arkansas? Don't you mean destroying the nation, destroying the presidency, destroying the credibility of constitutional government? Don't you mean, Bill, destroying the faith of Americans in constitutional government, in freedom? Isn't that what you really mean, Bill? When regulators finally closed Madison in 1989, the Resolution Trust Corporation, the federal agency responsible for cleaning up the savings and loan scams of the 80s, took over the mess. The RTC sued Frost & Company, the Madison accounting firm, for negligence in conducting its audits. One of Hillary's partners, Vince Foster, yes, the Vince Foster, folks, solicited the case from the RTC. But he failed to disclose Hillary's representation of Madison. He even submitted a letter to the regulators saying the law firm didn't represent thrifts. The law firm didn't represent thrifts. The law firm didn't represent thrifts. And Hillary Clinton says she don't know nothing about no S&Ls, A clear conflict of interest. But Hillary's law firm got the case. Hillary's law firm got the case. A third partner, Webster Hubbell, handled the case along with Hillary. The government sought up to $60 million in its suit. Hillary's law firm settled the case for $1 million, $2 million less than the limit of Frost's insurance coverage, so it cost Frost & Company nothing. This was after Hillary had been on retainer to Madison for many months. In addition, Hubbell's father-in-law, Seth Ward, was an officer of a Madison real estate subsidiary at the time they agreed to handle the case. Much of this was dug up by Nick Guerma. Ward was a director of Madison and approved many of the loans to Clinton cronies. He was also the recipient of a $600,000 loan from Madison, which was still owed at the time Madison was closed. The RTC considered his loan one of the worst examples of abuse at the savings and loan, but Hillary personally got the government to forgive it. Hillary got the government to forgive it. Hillary's law firm received $400,000 from the government for handling this case. The government, which was seeking up to $60 million, essentially got nothing. Out of the $1 million settlement, $400,000 went to Hillary's law firm, and a $600,000 loan to Seth Ward was forgiven. Oh, ain't socialism great, folks? Don't you just love it? Wish Karl Marx was here. He'd be rolling on the floor, laughing, holding his belly. Hubbell, the partner who handled most of the Frost suit, was later appointed by Bill Clinton as the number 3 person in the Justice Department. Justice. Justice. Just us. Just us. And we ain't included in that us, folks. Questions about Hillary's conflicts of interest don't stop at her work with the Rose Law Firm, for she has been caught red-handed in what clearly seems to be an insider trading scheme. As we all know, Hillary is so concerned about mankind and sick people, all socialists are. They want to help the poor, the sick, the bleeding, the homeless, that without any direct compensation or reward, she has given her very valuable time to fix the health care system in America. Wonder how many of her cronies will benefit from that. As head of the Health Task Force, Hillary made crucial decisions about the future of health care in America. The plan was developed secretly because Hillary couldn't have made her backroom deals if it was public. The Clintons are still resisting making the Health Task Force documents public, especially the documents that reveal conflicts of interest among task members. Now it turns out that while heading this task force, Hillary was part of a partnership that made its profits selling health stocks short. In other words, folks, capitalizing on downward moves in the stocks. Hillary had as much as $100,000 in a hedge fund called Value Partners One, which is based in Little Rock. Evidently, she was impressed when she read about Ivan Boesky. Most funds with short-selling strategies were hammered in '93 because of the stock market boom, but stocks in the healthcare fields plunged dramatically. The total value of stocks in pharmaceuticals, medical hardware, biotech, and health insurance fell $200 billion. That's billion with a B, largely as a result of Hillary's health care plans. Let me say that again, folks. Stock in pharmaceuticals, medical hardware, biotech, health insurance, nursing homes, etc. fell $200 billion, largely as a result of Hillary's health care plans, and she had sold these stocks short. Do you understand what I'm saying? I know many of you probably don't, but some of you do. Hillary's statements about health care directly affected the prices of these stocks on a daily basis. Now, do you really think she didn't know this? She was an attorney with 15 years legal experience. She played the stock market. She knew the impact her statements would have on the market, and there she was investing on the swings her press releases caused, selling health care stock short. Although the press has been careful to talk in terms like conflict of interest, it's a clear case of insider trading. It's a felony. The White House isn't denying Hillary had a conflict of interest. They just say the conflict of interest statutes don't apply to Hillary. Her finances are commingled with bills, and as president, he is exempt from those laws. They don't call him Slick Willie for nothing. The only formal legal opinion on the subject, drafted in the 80s, declared that the conflict laws don't apply to wives of presidents because spouses aren't federal employees. Now, that might seem to get Hillary off the hook, but it doesn't. You see, when she was heading the task force, there was a lawsuit demanding that the meetings be opened to the public. The Federal Advisory Committee Act says such meetings can be closed only if attended by full-time employees of the government. As an employee, she had to be paid. How much was she paid, and where is the evidence? The lawsuit was resolved, determining that Hillary was indeed a full-time government employee, and the public was told that she was a volunteer. So Hillary is not exempt. Her own testimony, she says she was an employee of the government. Therefore, she was in a conflict of interest. But that's not even the main point. Hillary Clinton manipulated share prices and traded on those manipulations. On Wall Street, you'd go to jail for that. On Capitol Hill, it ought to be the same. Madison Guarantee was not the only institution that Hillary and Bill Clinton and his cronies looted. Capital Management Corporation, which issued small business administration loans, was another prime target. David Hale, a municipal judge who was appointed by Bill Clinton, made the loans. According to Hale, Bill Clinton directly pressured him to make SBA loans for $300,000 to Mrs. McDougal, his partner's wife. Clinton also probably pressured Hale to loan $1 million to Guy Tucker, the present governor of Arkansas. And here we go again. One more time on the merry-go-round, folks. These loans were supposed to go to socially disadvantaged businesses. Instead, they went to the multi-millionaire wife of Clinton's business partner and Clinton's lieutenant governor. At least $110,000 of Mrs. McDougal's SBA loan went into Whitewater. Clinton's spokesman, James Lynch, now says that was a private loan from Mrs. McDougal to Whitewater, and that to suggest there was any impropriety is ridiculous. But even Jim McDougal admits the SBA loans to his wife were a scam. David Hale was the official who made these SBA loans. He says they all knew he was submitting fraudulent financial statements. He says Clinton and McDougal told him the loan was made out in Mrs. McDougal's name only because she was a woman and would therefore qualify as a minority. Folks, if women are a minority, what's going to happen to the future of the human race? Where do they get this bullshit from? And they're wheeling it around in wheelbarrows and dropping it out of the sky. Hale says he never even met Mrs. McDougal until she came to sign the papers and pick up the check. Mrs. McDougal, who is now under indictment for cashing $150,000 worth of stolen checks, claims to know nothing of the loan. Women are minorities. No wonder these Aryans are so upset thinking their race is going to become extinct. They can't find any women. They're minorities. All this baffles me, folks. What do I know? I'm just a crazy conspiracy nut. I'm paranoid. Oh, let me see. I wish my friend was here, the one that sent me the tapes. This is one of those nights I'd like to go off and sit on a mountain and talk to him. Indeed, Hale says McDougal told him the $300,000 would not be used by the designated borrower, Mrs. McDougal. Instead, he said it would conceal questionable transactions by Madison, including help for the Clintons. Hale says Clinton met twice with him about the loan, once telling him the Clinton name could not be associated with the deal anywhere in this, anywhere at all. He also said all three, McDougal, Clinton, and he, knew Mrs. McDougal did not legally qualify for the SBA loan. 3 months earlier, the McDougals had filed a financial statement showing assets of $3.1 million and net worth of $2.2 million. Quote, I knew what was going on, as we all did, Hale said, but we were friends, and that's just the way business is done in Arkansas, unquote. And guess what, dear sheeple? Of course, the money was never, ever paid back, even though Mrs. McDougal is a millionaire. Hale is now up for criminal prosecution. He says Clinton pressured him to make the fraudulent loans. U.S. Attorney Fletcher Jackson, who oversaw Hale's indictment, refused to conduct an investigation or even listen to Hale about Clinton's involvement. Hale says Jackson told him he didn't want to know anything about Clinton or Tucker because he had 8 years to retirement and was not looking to do anything to jeopardize it, unquote. Jackson later confirmed this conversation. As with Whitewater and Madison Guarantee, it was real estate that allowed Clinton and his friends to loot the SBA. You see, Whitewater was only one of the land scams invented to loot the savings and loans in banks, and not just in Arkansas, but all over the nation. Clinton appears to have connections to several such deals that involved millions in loans from Madison Guarantee and Capital Management Corporation, which issued the SBA guaranteed loans. In Texas, a man by the name of George Green was pulling the same scams in Texas as Clinton was pulling in Arkansas. And when they started to tie the hangman's noose to hoist George Green up by the nearest tree, he fled Texas and started publishing the Phoenix Journals. Oh, poor sheeple. Poor, poor sheeple. You're in big trouble and you don't even know that you're in trouble. By this time, Bill Clinton's name was no longer appearing on documents, but although his name does not appear on any of the later real estate deals, the owners that are named are the very same good old boys that appear over and over and over in all the Clinton scandals throughout the years. One such property was Castle Grande, a 1,100-acre swamp which was proposed to become a trailer park. I thought you all learned your lessons in Florida. It was owned by Jim Guy Tucker, who succeeded Clinton as governor, Steve Smith, Clinton's former aide, Seth Ward, father-in-law of one of Hillary's law partners, and other powerful Arkansas political and business figures. Like Whitewater, the project showed a loss on paper. Like Whitewater, it was financed with loans far surpassing the value of the property. Like Whitewater, Castle Grande was plagued by questionable agreements involving prominent Arkansas political figures. It finally went under with more than $3 million in loans paid for by the American taxpayer, who, by the way, doesn't even have to pay those taxes at all. Chihuahua. Castle Grande and related projects, including South Loop Construction, a 30-acre parcel for a shopping center next to Castle Grande, and Castle Sewer and Water, which was to provide some utility services to the development, borrowed millions from Madison and the SBA. The original property was purchased by Tucker, Smith, and Ward for $125,000. Tucker borrowed $260,000 from Madison to pay for it and diverted the rest of the money to other projects. Ward borrowed $600,000 from Madison to invest in the project, which he later defaulted on, and which Hillary arranged to have forgiven when she was representing the government. Yes, sir. When she was representing the government. 2 years later, a company then controlled by Tucker, South Loop Construction, purchased the property, this time for $353,000. Did you get that? Tucker is selling the property from one of his companies to another. The additional money for the purchase came from David Hale's Capital Management Corporation, which issued a $150,000 SBA loan. Tucker never repaid the SBA loan. Last spring, however, when bank regulators started turning the heat on under Madison, he rushed out and paid the original $260,000 loan. He got scared. In addition, Tucker purchased Castle Water and Sewer Corporation from Madison's real estate subsidiary. Madison financed the Tucker purchase with a $1,050,000 mortgage. Hale's company put in an additional $150,000 SBA loan. A year later, only 1 year later, Castle Grande stalled with only a few home lots that were ever sold, and there never was any marketing done. One bank examiner called the Castle Grande property, quote, low and swampy, unquote, and said it, quote, could not be developed without considerable cost. There is no evidence that there is a viable market for this land, unquote. Today, the land is littered with old armchairs and carpet. There's nothing to show for the millions looted from Madison and the Small Business Administration. Bank regulators have found a trail of shell corporations, fictitious transactions, exactly like George Green did in Texas and others did in other states across the nation. They're all the same scams, all run from the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia. What for? Why, to buy arms, for which to pay for drugs, with which to bring down the United States of America. That's what for. Shell corporations, fictitious transactions, inflated profit statements, and questionable payments to insiders, including Bill Clinton. Castle Grande is now included in a list of projects involving possible criminal conduct that's being presented before a special grand jury convened in Little Rock. George Bush's boys were involved in all of this also. But it was the political connections in the Castle Grande project financed by Madison that finally led the Justice Department to take control of what had been treated previously as a routine local investment. By this time, McDougal had been ousted from Madison by regulators, but his slot was quickly filled by another good old boy, Steve Cuffman, one of Tucker's former law associates. And Cuffman promptly forgave half of Tucker's $1,050,000 debt. The deal resulted in one of Madison's largest losses. William Seidman, former chairman of the FDIC, said the Castle Grande deal mirrored the type of risky ventures that helped bring many S&Ls down during the mid-1980s. Quote, "It has all the connotations of those things," Seidman said. "On its face, you would say the transaction looks like not a real transaction," unquote. Why don't you just say it? Why don't you just say it, Seidman? They're crooks. And it was a scam. Another project, Campobello, shades of Eleanor Roosevelt, shades of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Another well-known socialist. Another project, Campobello, was to develop 343 acres in West Little Rock and 3,900 acres on Campobello Island off the shores of Nova Scotia, Canada. This one was run by James McDougall, owner of Madison Guarantee, and Chris Wade, the real estate agent who was involved in Whitewater. This project went bust just like the others. Same players, same scam. Same disappearing records, disappearing money, disappearing deeds, disappearing everything. One of Madison's lawyers, Beverly Bassett from Mitchell Law Firm, was key to seeking approval for Campobello from the State Securities Department. Interestingly enough, Jim Guy Tucker was a senior partner at the same law firm. And this project ultimately became Madison's biggest loser, with $3.7 million in loans outstanding. This is how savings and loan after savings and loan has been looted around the country. And it's not because all of these people in different states and different cities all thought of the same plan at the same time. It's because it was orchestrated. It starts out with a piece of marginal property. The insiders bid it up rapidly in sham sales and then use it as collateral for huge loans. Anything of real value is sold off. All the money is missing and no one knows where it went. The project goes broke, leaving huge loan indebtedness against it, paid for by the taxpayers. As with Whitewater, the Castle Grande and Campobello land losses were terrible, despicable, but they are not the major issue here. It is the fraudulently obtained loans, particularly those that were never repaid. It's the disappearing money. Clinton's cronies used these land schemes to make millions and take millions from Madison Guarantee. They took millions from the SBA through Capital Management Corporation, owned by David Hale. Almost none of that money was ever repaid. It was stolen, pure and simple. Federal authorities are investigating Clinton's involvement in these loans. The April 3, 1986 SBA loan by Capital Management for $300,000 to Mrs. McDougall, routed to her company Master Marketing. $110,000 of this money is believed to have been routed into Whitewater. The loan was never repaid. And we'll talk about the rest of these loans and drugs in Mena, Arkansas, and many other things tomorrow night. Good night. God bless you. And God save the Republic. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Federal authorities are investigating Clinton's involvement in these loans. The April 3, 1986 Small Business Administration loan by Capital Management for $300,000 to Mrs. McDougall, routed to her company, Master Marketing. $110,000 of this money is believed to have been routed into Whitewater. The loan, of course, ladies and gentlemen, was never repaid. A February 28, 1986 SBA loan by Capital Management for $150,000 to Castle Sewer and Water, which involves Tucker and others, also never repaid. Castle Sewer and Water also defaulted on more than $860,000 in Madison loans. Again, never repaid. An October 3, 1987 SBA loan by Capital Management for $150,000 to South Loop Construction Corporation, Tucker's company. Guess what? Never repaid. A February 21st, 1986 SBA loan by Capital Management for $65,000 to the communications company in Fayetteville, Arkansas, owned by Steve Smith, Clinton's former aide. The firm's purpose was to manage Democratic political campaign. Now, who could that be? It declared bankruptcy in 1992 and defaulted on the loan. Again, never repaid. It was this same Mr. Smith who approved Kingston Bank's $30,000 loan to Hillary that the FDIC demanded the Clintons repay, and it was repaid, but with another loan. A January 10, 1986 SBA loan by Capital Management for $149,000 to Campobello Realty, James McDougall's and Chris Wade's venture, never repaid. These SBA loans were supposed to go to minority business owners who could not obtain financial and other assistance, but Clinton's officials required them to use the money, and they leased the space from McDougall. This was done, folks, at a cost of more than $5,300 a month for 2 years, according to federal law enforcement sources. Investigators want to know whether the lease was inflated to allow for the $2,000 a month retainer for Mrs. Clinton. 5 other building owners had submitted lower bids to house the ADFA in better locations, but they were passed over at the insistence of Bill Clinton for McDougall. Remember, folks, this comes from the research of CAGI members, the research of myself, William Cooper, and a man named Nick Guarino. Now we come to some of the real meat of the matter, the Clintons and their bond and drug dealers. The Clintons' association with bond and drug dealer Dan Lassiter began in 1979 at the Oaklawn Racetrack in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where Bill's mother, Mrs. Kelly, had a box next to his. Lassiter was the founder of the Ponderosa Steakhouse chain. He was very wealthy by the time he met Mrs. Kelly and Clinton's half-brother, Roger. The racetrack friendship soon blossomed into an introduction to Clinton, who was trying to regain the governor's mansion after losing the November '79 election and having money troubles. It was his association with the Clintons that spurred him to open a bond trading firm. Lassiter gave Roger Clinton a job and Bill Clinton major campaign contributions. Bill added Lassiter and Company to the exclusive list of firms eligible to underwrite state bond issues. This classification generated millions in dollars of business for the firm. Lassiter contributed huge sums to Clinton's ongoing political campaigns, sponsored lavish drug parties at his office, paid off Roger Clinton's drug debts, encouraged his staff to donate to Clinton, promising higher commissions to compensate them for their expense, and frequently flew Bill around the country in his private jet. Clinton, dear listeners, for his part, sent Lassiter lucrative bond contracts for the state of Arkansas. Bond issues were one of Clinton's main vehicles for patronage and largesse for him and his cronies. Most of these bonds were issued through the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, which bundled local bond issues to make them more attractive to buyers. ADFA was created in 1985 by Mr. Clinton to expand the state's authority to issue tax-exempt bonds to develop property in Arkansas. Investment bankers in the state and a former ADFA official involved in government bond contracts say it was common knowledge that companies headed by political supporters of Mr. Clinton received favored status for government awards, including business loans through ADFA bond issues. In a letter to the FBI, the former official said that many of the ADFA's bond sales were intended, quote, as political favors or repayments for campaign support, unquote. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, if you wanted an ADFA bond issue, you played ball with Bill Clinton, and some of your money had better go into his campaign fund. These ADFA bonds were the height of cronyism. Clinton and his friends were able to use them to loot over $1 billion with a B, and now we're getting to the real money, $1 billion with a B dollars from investors. Many of these so-called public project bonds were nothing but shams. They are almost guaranteed to default, leaving thousands of investors with huge losses. And where is the money? Where, dear listeners, is the money? Doing the complex legal work and sending the bonds to market was a bonanza for law firms and underwriters. Hillary's firm got much of the legal work on these bonds. One such contract was the 1985 bond issue to pay for the Arkansas police radio system. Ironically, it was this system which was later used to bust Lassiter on drug charges. Clinton got the Arkansas legislature to approve a contract for Lassiter to sell $30.2 million in the bonds. The contract netted Lassiter $750,000. Lassiter also was passed sweetheart bond deals for the Arkansas Housing Development Agency, AHDA, which awarded millions of dollars in tax-exempt bonds. Altogether, the firm received $1.6 million in brokerage fees for 24 separate tax-exempt bond issues. Representative James Leach of the House Banking Committee is expected to widen his probe of the Whitewater-Madison affair to include these bond deals. Quote, "What you have is a picture of Milken-esque economic entanglements in microcosm in the state of Arkansas," unquote, said Leach. These sweetheart deals continued while Lassiter and two of his partners were under investigation for cocaine distribution. Lassiter later was sentenced to 30 months in prison. Although Bill Clinton had personal use of Lassiter's private jet and was rumored to have attended Lassiter's parties, where cocaine sometimes appeared like a blizzard in a veil, as usual, Bill was completely uninvolved and had no knowledge whatsoever. Don't know nothing about no drug parties, don't know nothing about no jet, don't know nothing about no savings and loans, didn't get no money from Whitewater. No knowledge. And, of course, folks, he certainly did not inhale. Even after Lassiter was sentenced to prison, the bond issues continued to flow to his firm. Patsy Thomason, who is presently on Clinton's staff at the White House, was made executive vice president at Lassiter's firm. She was given power of attorney to run the company in his absence. She handled $664 million in Arkansas bond contracts for him. Ms. Thomason is now a Clinton aide at the White House. Where else would she be? Now, why would Lassiter give power of attorney to a Clinton aide if he wasn't Clinton's surrogate all along? I know Clinton's name isn't on it, but he was clearly the one with the power. The Lassiter story would die here, folks, except it gets even more intriguing when you find out how Hillary and her partners at the Rose Law Firm tie into all this. And later, we'll get to a little airstrip in a town called Mena. It's similar to her long-established pattern. The banking officials hire her to sue Lassiter. She fails to disclose her friendship with him or his role as benefactor to her husband. She negotiates a secret out-of-court settlement for far less than the government could have expected to receive. But first, some background. You see, Lassiter's bond trading firm expanded its business beyond Arkansas. He signed deals to trade Treasury bond futures with several savings and loans, including First American Savings and Loan in Oak Brook, Illinois, and Home Federal Savings and Loan in Centralia, Illinois. First American lost at least $361,572 in those T-bond futures trades. Dan Walker, president of First American and a former governor of Illinois, sued Lassiter for unauthorized trading. "They had general authority to trade," said Walker, "but they were supposed to call us each time they made a trade, and they did not do that." Walker also alleged that Lassiter's firm committed mail wire and securities fraud in the unauthorized trades. His suit never made it to court, however. Walker himself was charged by federal officials of lending himself $1.4 million in federally insured deposits. He was eventually convicted of bank fraud and perjury. Federal regulators seized First American. The FSLIC decided to pursue the $3.3 million suit that Walker began against Lassiter. Of course, they hired the Rose Law Firm. Who else? And the suit was assigned to, guess who? Hillary Clinton. And guess who else, folks? It gets even better. Vincent by God Foster, who later became Deputy White House Counsel for Clinton and who was found dead last July. Hillary and Foster negotiated a confidential settlement. The result, Lassiter paid the government $200,000 in return for a dismissal of the $3.3 million suit. No charges were filed, and he walked away scot-free. Now, it shouldn't take a professor of legal ethics to tell you that Hillary's role in this suit is sleazy. She should have immediately excused herself on grounds of conflict of interest, but as you saw in the previous two programs, she's not in the habit of doing that. Hillary's law firm was hired again by another savings and loan, Home Federal Savings and Loan, in another suit against Lassiter. This suit paralleled that of First Americans. Home Federal was seeking a $4.6 million suit against Lassiter and Company, again for unauthorized trading. King Betts was the president of Home Federal. He said that he hired Hillary's firm because the cases were so similar. The government took over Home Federal soon afterward and continued the case. Meanwhile, Thomas Mars, one of the attorneys who had worked with Foster and Hillary in the first suit against Lassiter, left Hillary's firm. Months later, he started representing Lassiter against Home Federal, which was still represented by Hillary's firm. Are you dizzy yet? Don't worry, folks. It gets even better. This roller coaster ride is going to put your stomach right up in the top of your head, I guarantee it. Neither Mars nor Hillary's firm notified Home Federal about this glaring conflict of interest. Betts says he was also never told about Lassiter's ties to the Clintons. Foster, Hillary's partner, advised Betts to accept a $250,000 out-of-court settlement on the $4.6 million case, and they took it. So Hillary saved Lassiter's neck while representing the government against him, and after he had done time for dealing cocaine. Of course, Lassiter had paid off Roger Clinton's cocaine debt, had hired Roger Clinton, was Bill Clinton's protege in business, let him use his jet, brought him in to attend wild, orgasmic parties where the cocaine fell like rain. The final twist in this story takes place in November 1990. Lassiter had been sentenced to 30 months in prison, but after only 4 months in a halfway house and 2 months under house arrest, Governor Bill Clinton gave Lassiter a full pardon. Lassiter is now an executive at Phoenix Mortgage Company in Little Rock. And if you've got money in that company, you better get it out quick. Now, ladies and gentlemen, during this exact same time, the chief of Clinton's personal bodyguards was in charge of the CIA's importation of drugs into the United States of America in a small airstrip in Arkansas called Mena, Arkansas. Clinton denies any knowledge of this. However, when investigators brought this to the attention of the Justice Department, it could no longer be hidden. However, the results of that investigation have not ever been released to the public. But the drugs no longer flow into the United States at Mena, Arkansas. Ollie North knows all about it because the name of Mena, Arkansas came up several times in the Iran-Contra investigations, where they were trading, ladies and gentlemen, arms for drugs, flying the drugs into the United States, selling the drugs, taking the money to finance third world insurrections, illegal wars, and, of course, the destruction of the sovereignty of nations in order to bring about their one world totalitarian socialist government. Ollie North, in his testimony, said that they had even prepared a plan to suspend the Constitution of the United States of America, yet most of you have hailed Ollie North as a great hero. Clinton was obviously and without any doubt involved in the drugs flowing into Mena, Arkansas. There is even speculation, and some evidence has been introduced, that some drugs were manufactured in Arkansas in clandestine labs and distributed from there throughout the rest of the country. Now, I cannot believe that Clinton was nominated for President of the United States. Nick Guarino can't believe that Clinton was nominated for President of the United States. Anyone who has studied Bill Clinton for even 5 minutes is absolutely amazed that he was nominated for the President of the United States. And it's even more shocking that he won the election. Nick Guarino knew Bill Clinton. He knew Arkansas politics. He knew what Bill Clinton had been involved in. How could anyone so corrupt be elected to the presidency of the United States of America? With Clinton's very flawed moral, sexual, emotional, ethical, and business character, he should have been immediately disqualified. Never mind the fact that he clearly dodged the draft, and that has been demonstrated by letters which he wrote in his own handwriting and signed himself. There's no doubt about it. And at a time when Americans were forbidden to travel to the Soviet Union, Bill Clinton was in Moscow being given the red carpet VIP treatment and was given a tour of the Kremlin, met with high-ranking Soviet officials. There is no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that he was being groomed to bring socialism to the United States of America. Was he a KGB agent, as many people claim? I say it doesn't matter, for at the highest levels, the KGB and the CIA are the same organization. And it shouldn't take too big of a brain to figure that out. The Cold War was a scam. London and Wall Street created the Soviet Union. And Chase Manhattan Bank has had a branch in the Kremlin for over 50 years, ladies and gentlemen. Do you realize that for the first time in our history, a man was running for president while he had been referred for a criminal investigation and possible criminal indictment by an independent federal agency, and the press didn't even discuss it? The fact that the Resolution Trust Corporation would send a criminal referral to the United States Attorney in Arkansas meant there was enough evidence to suggest Clinton had committed numerous federal crimes and would be convicted by a jury of his peers. The 21-page document prepared in the fall of 1992 targeted the Madison failure. It specifically named Bill, Hillary, and current Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker, as well as McDougal and other Clinton cronies. It said they were principals and benefited from the activities of shell corporations created by McDougal. It also said that while there was not yet enough evidence to prove the Clintons and Tucker knew about suspected check kiting and account overdrafts authorized by McDougal, they stood to benefit from such activities. Officials of two separate federal agencies, the RTC and the SBA, were recommending a criminal investigation of the activities of Clinton and his cronies. The RTC officials felt so strongly about this referral that they issued a second one after the first request had been squashed. This referral again named Clinton. The SBA and the RTC strongly recommend proceeding with it even today. The allegations of Clinton's criminal activities have been suppressed. The public has not been allowed to see the details of the criminal referrals. If Clinton were innocent, these documents could prove it. But Bill says the public is not entitled to see them. This from a president who promised an open and honest administration, but like all socialists, he is a liar. Clinton was nominated for president because of a freak situation, they think. Bush was so popular after Desert Storm that everyone, even the Democrats, thought his re-election was a shoo-in. Everyone except me and the listeners of this broadcast, because I told you who was going to be elected, a man that none of you knew anything about. Most of you never heard of him, William Clinton. None of the front-runners in the Democratic Party wanted to risk losing the election. They all panicked and jumped ship. Now, that's what the public is supposed to think, ladies and gentlemen. The truth is, the Bilderberg Group meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany in 1991, the most powerful men and women in the world met and chose Bill Clinton to be the next president of the United States. And as soon as my intelligence reports came to me that this was their decision, I announced on the air, on this broadcast, that William Clinton would win the election. No doubt about it. There was no need to even consider another candidate winning. And he took the election. You see, George Bush also knew the decision of the Bilderberg Group, and that's why he did not campaign. H. Ross Perot also knew the decision of the Bilderberg Group, and that's why he campaigned to split the conservative vote and then backed out. And that's why Pat Buchanan went around the country taking votes away from conservative candidates also. They split the conservative vote to ensure that candidate Bill Clinton would fulfill the wishes of the most powerful, richest men and women in the world. And the only place you heard about it was on the hour of the time. At first, it didn't look like Clinton had a chance, folks. Most of you never heard of him. Most of you never checked into his background. Most of you never asked any questions, especially if you were a Democrat or a liberal or a socialist. But the months passed, and the excitement of the Gulf War died down. Public sentiment began to focus on our economic woes at home. George Bush failed to campaign, and Clinton was promising a new social order that would end all our worries. Americans believed him because they were desperate. We were in a recession and sinking deeper. Truth is, it was a depression. Many, including some Republicans, blamed Bush. They wanted anyone who promised better times. The real culprit is the Federal Reserve. They can create depressions, recessions, inflation, anything they want, anytime they want, and the president is powerless to stop it. Clinton was making the promise that the public wanted to hear, and the public, you, the sheeple, were unwilling to see his flaws. At any mention of his unsavory past, Clinton's spin doctors created diversions and cried foul. And you, the sheeple, let him get away with it. Americans forgot something about elections. They're supposed to be smear campaigns. They're supposed to sling mud. If the candidates have dirty laundry, we should see it. It has to come out. And that's when it should come out. And that's the only way we can judge the candidate's most important quality, and that is character. If a man lies to his wife, he's going to lie to you. If he cheats on her every chance he gets, he'll cheat on you. If he steals from the constituents of his home state, he'll steal from you. If he can be bought for money, he has no principles. Instead of a question of whether he'll sell out his country, it's only a question of how much and when. And if a man is willing to do anything to get power, all can let it sink in. Over 28 people closely associated with Bill Clinton have died. Some have been murdered, some have been beaten to death, some have died supposedly of suicide, but they have died. The odds against that happening in such a short time are incalculable, impossible. Vincent Foster, found dead in a little-known Washington park. Supposedly committed suicide, but all of the clues point to the fact that he was murdered somewhere else and brought there, and that he was murdered execution style. And guess what? The homicide investigation was conducted by the park police, who know absolutely nothing about conducting homicide investigations, and that's why his body was deposited there. So no legitimate homicide investigation would be conducted because the park police had jurisdiction and no one else had jurisdiction and no one else was allowed to investigate. And you all bought it. You all bought it. Bill Clinton is the most dangerous political figure of this century. We have not seen so much corruption, immorality, and cynical contempt for his fellow man in a head of state since Stalin. And Stalin also was a Marxist, a socialist, a communist. And so is Bill Clinton, and so is his wife Hillary. They have been linked, not by me, folks, although in our follow-up investigation we found that the links are true, but by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They have been linked to Marxist terrorist groups. Hillary, during her whole life, has been a supporter of socialism and has been linked directly to financial support of Marxist terrorist groups. Yet the American public don't want to hear this. Don't want to hear it. Clinton's contempt permeates everything he does. How many of you have noticed that sleazy little stupid smile that he always has on his face, even when he's talking about something tragic? It never goes away. It is a symbol of contempt. It is the outward display of what he's really thinking inside. There's a sucker born every minute. That's what he's really thinking inside. I always get the feeling that he can't really believe he's where he's at. And he gives himself the credit, even though very little of the credit belongs to Bill Clinton. As an Oxford schoolmate, Cliff Jackson, an honorable man, said of him, Clinton derives pleasure from manipulating and deceiving people, and how well we've learned that. He said he had kept silent about Clinton for years, but, quote, it just seemed too serious a thing that the American people would elect him as their leader, unquote. This is the stuff dictators are made out of. Bill Clinton believes the greatest lie of all, that the end justifies the means. And isn't that what those who call themselves the Illuminati believe? Fraud, deception, obstruction of justice, possibly even conspiracy to murder, maybe even murder itself, all to win the presidency. He has put himself above the law. With the investigations pending in the RTC and SBA and a criminal referral waiting to be acted on in Arkansas, Clinton should have been exposed and deposed of easily. But his spin doctors, professional liars, were brilliant. They were able to keep the American people and the Republican Party from learning crucial facts about Clinton that they had a right to know. And Bush's campaign people must have been asleep at the wheel, you think? No, not at all. Bush was not supposed to win, and so he didn't. Bush is a team player, if you haven't figured that out. Now, these facts, folks, if known, would surely have cost Clinton the election. But Clinton made sure they were covered up. The RTC's criminal referral that mentioned Bill and Hillary was sent to Charles Banks, United States Attorney in Little Rock, on October 7th, 1992, less than a month before the election. Banks' chief assistant, Mac Dotson, immediately sent an urgent report to top United States Justice Department lawyers. He said the Clintons were named as possible beneficiaries of McDougal's criminal activities in the referral. Dotson wrote that he believed further criminal investigation is warranted. This should have led to an immediate criminal investigation. It's standard procedure. If it were you, you would have been arrested and thrown in jail. And the American people should have been told that the Democratic nominee for president who was leading the polls might be a criminal who could soon come under indictment. But former United States Attorney General William P. Barr says he did not find out about the urgent report until just before the election. The United States Attorney's Office in Little Rock apparently concealed the RTC criminal referral from him. It has been revealed that the Little Rock office failed to put the referral into the computer reporting systems. If they had done so, the referral would have been brought to the attention of senior officials. But by the time the Attorney General did find out, it was too late. Clinton won the election. Barr was soon removed from his post, and the referral died. RTC field officials must be very convinced that the Clintons were involved in criminal activity with McDougal, because they have issued new referrals with even stronger documentation, and that is also withheld from the public. Again, the referrals named Clinton, Hillary, Tucker, McDougal, and Ward, as well as numerous other big borrowers and Madison officials. This is highly unusual. Once a referral like this is dropped, it usually stays dropped. But they have the assistance also of the Central Intelligence Agency in suppressing this information. For if the investigation were righteously pursued, it would lead directly to the doorstep of the Central Intelligence Agency. The field officials who issued the referral have even gone so far as to appeal to top RTC brass in Washington for guidance, but Washington has refused to intervene. It's not surprising Clinton fired the head of the RTC last year and replaced him temporarily with his old college roommate, Roger Altman, another crony. Altman, who is also Deputy Treasury Secretary, working for the International Monetary Fund under the United Nations, has refused to take any action against his good friend. Altman was supposed to fill the RTC spot for only 1 month while Clinton nominated a full-time replacement. Congress had already stated that they would not approve Altman for the permanent post because of his obvious conflicts of interest. This from Congress! But a year later, with the criminal allegations still unanswered, uninvestigated, and languishing, no permanent RTC chief has been named yet. And I venture to tell you that none will be. Clinton has filled Washington with his loyal cronies, and they are all protecting him. At the Treasury Department, he has Janet Reno, who cooperated in suppressing Whitewater documents and refused for months to conduct an investigation into Whitewater. At the RTC, he has his old college buddy, Roger Altman. At the FBI, he has Louis Frisch, who was handpicked by White House counsel Bernard Nussbaum. And I think I said Treasury Department for Janet Reno. I meant to say Justice Department. I hope you will forgive me. In Arkansas, he has his new United States Attorney, Paula Casey. When Clinton's friend Altman refused to follow up on his RTC field officials' referrals, they were sent her in Arkansas, and this was October 1993. Casey was a Clinton appointee, campaign volunteer, and former student of Clinton's at the University of Arkansas, got the job after Janet Reno fired Charles Banks, the previous United States Attorney. It was rumored that Banks had been about to issue subpoenas on Whitewater Madison. Casey, Clinton's hand-picked choice, refused to act on the criminal referral. Socialists are liars, deceivers, and if they remain in power, they will strip us of all of our liberties. You watch. On October 27, 1993, a stack of new referrals on her desk, Casey finally responded to 6 months of RTC inquiries on the fate of their first referral, then a year old. She told the RTC she concurred with the Justice Department's decision to forego an investigation due to insufficient information. She lied. Days later, in the wake of news reports about the latest RTC referrals and question about her ties to Clinton and other senior Democrats in the case, Casey rescued herself from further involvement. That is, she removed herself from the case. But Clinton's buddies, dear listeners, aren't going to be able to protect him indefinitely. The House and Senate have recently both passed legislation authorizing a Watergate-style special prosecutor, and these bills need to be reconciled in conference committee, and you need to call your congressmen, your representatives, and your senators and insist that this be done, and that no stops be allowed. Robert Fisk, Clinton's hand-picked special prosecutor, has been so overwhelmed by the evidence that he requested and received a special grand jury in Little Rock to investigate the allegations against Clinton. This is the first time in the history of the United States that any president has ever faced a grand jury. but it will take a special prosecutor with subpoena and prosecutorial power, independent of the White House, to get the truth out. And he's going to have to be a man solid within himself, confident, at peace with God, for he will be intimidated. He will know about the 28 dead bodies littered about Bill Clinton. It will take a very special person to be able to deal with the fear that will come with this job. It's going to happen. Clinton is going to be the first president to go straight from the White House to jail. The presidency will come down. A key player in the sordid affairs of Whitewater and Bill Clinton's rise to power is Vincent Foster. Foster worked at the Rose Law Firm, where along with Hillary and Webster Hubbell, he was a senior partner. Foster, dear listeners, was a fixer. He was deeply involved in the Clintons' S&L scams and cover-ups. He was the one who conned the FDIC into hiring Hillary to sue the auditors of her former client, Madison Guarantee, the Madison Guarantee that was paying her $2,000 a month retainer. Hillary and Foster convinced the FDIC to settle its $60 million case for $1 million. They also forgave a $600,000 loan to Seth Ward, father-in-law of one of their partners at Rose. And Rose's fee was $400,000. Foster was also a key attorney, again with Hillary, in getting drug dealer Dan Lassiter off the hook in two other multi-million-dollar S&L scandals. Lassiter was being sued by the FDIC for $7.9 million. Hillary and Foster, while representing the government, got him off for $450,000. And when the chief of Clinton's personal security was found operating a large drug importation business in Mena, Arkansas, Foster covered up for the Clintons on that one too. These scams cost the American taxpayers at least minimum, because nobody can really tell, minimum $60 million. Well, they made a small fortune for Hillary, Foster, Lassiter, and their other cronies. It's also been reported by reliable witnesses that Foster and Hillary were lovers. Former law enforcement officials state that on numerous occasions they saw Foster and Hillary passionately embracing. They often spent weekends together at the Rose Law Firm's secluded cabin. When Hillary filed for divorce against Bill in 1986, Foster, the man she called her closest friend, was there for her. Foster played a key role in getting Clinton elected president. He proved the Clintons lost money in Whitewater by hiring longtime Clinton associate attorney James Lyons to lead up an independent audit. Clinton rewarded Lyons by naming him to a prestigious U.S. government advisory panel seeking peace in Ireland. This audit has come under heavy fire. And our opinion, my opinion, Nick Guarino's opinion, many of our chief CAGI operatives across this country, it was worthless. An entire year's worth of records were missing, and the auditors ignored countless documents, but Foster's ruse worked. When Whitewater was brought up during the campaign, Clinton pointed to the independent CPA audit that showed he had lost $68,900, the audit that had no records to audit. The press bought the story because they wanted to see their liberal, Marxist, socialist scumbag hero in the White House. Their dream of destroying the sovereignty of the United States and bringing about their new world order could be realized very quickly. After he was elected president, Clinton appointed Foster as deputy White House counsel. Foster was also acting as the Clintons' personal attorney, which should have been a conflict of interest. But his real job was to bury Bill and Hillary's sordid past, and especially Whitewater, as deep as he could. And of course, there are the clandestine meetings with Hillary, over which several Secret Service agents are said to have quit their job. And because of other allegations involving Bill and women. that they were required to bring into the White House for him. It's on record. The problem was Whitewater wouldn't stay buried. Foster had been on the job only a few months, yet more and more damaging news kept coming out in the press about the phony losses, the tax returns that were never filed, the paperwork that was missing, Clinton's ties to McDougal, the missing money. Instead of getting hushed up, the whole affair was getting worse. And now, because of this broadcast, they can never bury it. For what the traditional press has hidden from the public, I have revealed. And every month, new investigations keep springing up on scandals that Foster was supposed to have handled. The RTC had sent a second request to the Justice Department in its ever-expanding criminal investigation of Bill and Hillary Clinton. It was clear this one wasn't simply going away. Travelgate. The sham deal in the White House travel office was coming unglued. FBI Director William Sessions was enraged that Clinton was trying to use the FBI to cover up his Travelgate and Whitewater messes. When Waco broke out, he was forbidden to travel to the scene and was eventually fired. The FBI was about to uncover the SBA Hale-Whitewater connection. Hale, a Clinton appointee, charged that Clinton had forced him to give fraudulent SBA loans worth millions to his cronies. The last straw came when Sessions issued a subpoena for Hale's documents, including papers related to Whitewater. That same day, Clinton fired Sessions. The first time ever an FBI director has been dismissed. Hillary was in deep trouble over her conflicts of interest in insider trading of healthcare stocks. The Whitewater cover-up was falling apart. McDougal had gone to an attorney in Little Rock and made a taped statement. Quote, "I could sink it." Rumors came to him that the Washington Times was going to publish an expose of his sordid past. And McDougal had said, "I could sink it quicker than they could lie about it, if I could get in a position so I wouldn't have my head beaten off, and Bill knows that," unquote. Another scandal, the illegal search of confidential State Department documents by Clinton officials, was about to explode. Clinton desperately needed ammunition to blackmail his political enemies as the Whitewater scandal unfolded. The State Department Office of Investigation was demanding criminal action be taken against Clinton aides for these crimes. Clinton had a serious problem, folks. Foster knew all of the Clintons' dirty deals. He knew where the bodies were buried. He was party to many of them and was the hatchet man in charge of covering them up. Other than Hillary, Foster was the only person alive who knew the intimate details. And if what he knew ever came out, Clinton would get impeached. And it was coming out. Foster was showing signs of cracking. He knew he might be the next one targeted in the criminal indictments, and he told his brother-in-law, former Arkansas Congressman Burl Anthony, that he was very worried that Congress was about to launch a probe into his affairs. Foster even retained his own personal lawyer. He wrote, quote, "No one will believe the Clintons are innocent," unquote. Foster had become a danger to the president. He knew too much. He could not be allowed to live. And while we cannot prove what I am going to tell you next, these events are pieced together from circumstantial evidence that we have accumulated. On July 20th, 1993, Foster's worst nightmare came true. A shocking phone call told him the FBI was about to issue subpoenas for David Hale. Foster knew Hale would crack and lead them to Tucker, Smith, Madison Marketing, Castle Grande, and Whitewater. He immediately rose from his desk and had an emergency meeting with Bill Clinton. He told Clinton the SBA affair was about to be blown wide open. It wouldn't take long for them to piece together the looting of Madison. The president was going down. Foster wanted to resign. Foster wanted, folks, to resign. Clinton had a plan of his own. He told Foster to calm down, that they could handle it just as they always had. He told him to set up a meeting on Whitewater outside the White House for later that day. When Foster arrived, his assassins were waiting. They shot him in the head, drove his body to Fort Marcy, where they carefully staged Foster's suicide, And here's how they covered up the murder. First, they had to make sure none of Foster's incriminating papers were found, so contrary to standard police procedure, Foster's office was not immediately sealed. Instead, Chief White House Counsel Bernard Nussbaum, along with Hillary's Chief of Staff Margaret Williams and Clinton aide Patsy Thomason, the one who ran Dan Lassiter's bond company while he was in the halfway house, entered the office just hours after Foster was found. His body wasn't even cold, folks. They spent 2 hours rifling through his office, taking out the sensitive documents on Whitewater and Travelgate. Those documents have never been made public. And next, they had to make sure no credible law enforcement agency would investigate Foster's death, and especially not the FBI, so they dumped the body in a public park, and Clinton's Justice Department assigned the case to the Keystone Cops of the Park Police. The Park Police are normally in charge of crowd control. In the politically charged death of a key government official, they don't know what to do, and this was proved by the incredible way they bungled the investigation. Other than the autopsy, no sophisticated investigation was done until much later. Though it's standard procedure to make the autopsy public 6 months later, that still has not happened. Good night. God bless you all, and may God save this republic. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm your host, William Cooper. On Friday night, we ended in the middle of the death and investigation of the death of a man named Vincent Foster. Now, I'm not going to go into what led up to this again tonight. I'm just going to finish where we left off, and hopefully tonight finish with this whole sordid thing. And it is sordid, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to begin with how they covered up the murder of Vincent Foster. First, ladies and gentlemen, they had to make sure none of Foster's incriminating papers were found. So contrary to standard police procedure, Foster's office was not immediately sealed. Instead, Chief White House Counsel Bernard Nussbaum, along with Hillary's Chief of Staff Margaret Williams and Clinton aide Patsy Thomason, the one who ran Dan Lassiter's bond company while he was in the halfway house, entered the office just hours after Foster was found. His body wasn't even cold yet. They spent 2 hours rifling through his office, taking out the sensitive documents on Whitewater and Travelgate, and those documents have never been made public. Next, they had to make sure no credible law enforcement agency would investigate Foster's death, and especially not the FBI. They dumped the body in a public park, and Clinton's Justice Department assigned the case to the Keystone Cops, called the Park Police. You see, the Park Police are normally in charge of crowd control. In the politically charged death of a key government official, they don't even know what to do. And this was proved by the incredible, insane way that they bungled the entire investigation. Other than an autopsy, no sophisticated investigation was done until much later. Though it's standard procedure to make the autopsy public 6 months later, that still has not happened, and don't look for it to happen, folks. The Park Police did no ballistic test on the weapon until 4 to 5 months after Foster died, so they don't know if the gun they recovered actually killed Foster. They recovered no bullet. They did not even search the death scene with a metal detector to recover the critical missing bullet, which should have been standard procedure. Witnesses reported seeing a van and a menacing-looking Hispanic man around Foster's car just before Foster's body was discovered, but the Park Police never had composite sketches made to identify this man. The truth is, the Park Police has never been trained in how to conduct a homicide investigation. They didn't seal Foster's office until 2 whole days after his murder. His office should have been sealed immediately. A former Washington police official stated, quote, "I was completely shocked to have learned that Foster's office wasn't sealed immediately after his death," unquote. It was many months before the park police sent out Foster's clothing and the gun for forensic examination. Many months, allowing deterioration of evidence. And who knows what happened to the clothing and the gun during that period of time. Who knows whether they were washed or not? Who knows exactly who handled that clothing and that weapon? You see, the clothing and the gun should have been sent out the day after the murder for forensic examination. But Park Police spokesman Major Robert Hines said the agency did not need forensics to make our conclusion that Foster committed suicide. Rather than sending evidence to the FBI gun lab, the finest in the world, the Park Police sent the evidence to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, BATF. The murderers, the people who conducted the massacre at Waco, Texas, the people who don't even work for the United States government, but for the International Monetary Fund under the United Nations, according to the Treaty of Bretton Woods. Well-placed sources at the BATF said they were very surprised to learn that Park Police claimed tests had been done at the BATF labs. They knew nothing about it. And, of course, if tests had been done there, they should have known something about it. Statements of paramedics on the scene strongly suggest Foster was murdered elsewhere, his body brought to the park where it was staged to look like a suicide. The paramedics, who have since been forced by government officials to remain silent, and no one can be forced to remain silent, folks, which means they just don't have any backbone. Jellyfish sheeple is what I call them. They said it was the most unusual suicide they'd seen. A gunshot wound to the head should have blown out his entire back of his head. Blood and guts should have been spewed out all over the murder scene, but only a trickle of blood was found down Foster's cheek with no blood on the gun itself. Incredibly, they could find no exit wound. Later, the government said there was an exit wound. With the high-velocity cartridge of a .38, the gun should have been flung from the body, according to one pathologist, up to 30 feet away. It was found still being held in Foster's right hand, both arms at his sides. Foster himself should have been sprawled and contorted from the violence of the shot. Instead, he was found lying flat on his back, both legs straight, side by side, and the paramedics said it looked as though he had been laid out ready for the coffin. I think this was done to send a very clear message, quote, "Don't talk," unquote. Other people involved in the Clinton scams knew Foster. They would quickly see this was no suicide. At the same time, the spin doctors were able to convince the press Foster had somehow taken his own life. The so-called suicide note didn't show up until 6 days after Foster's death. It was unsigned, undated, ripped into 27 pieces, and contained no fingerprints. It was probably a page torn out of Foster's diary, if he even wrote it, and certainly was not a suicide note. It never even mentioned suicide. Nussbaum supposedly found it while going through Foster's briefcase, which he had taken from Foster's office. But FBI and Park Police agents watching Nussbaum rifle the office said they had a clear view of the briefcase and nothing was in it. The FBI has opened an obstruction of justice investigation into the events surrounding Foster's murder and cover-up. Among other things, the FBI is questioning Nussbaum's handling of murder documents. The number 2 man in the Justice Department, Philip Heyman, took exception to the handling of the Foster investigation, and he was abruptly terminated by Bill Clinton through Janet Reno, the mastermind of the Waco massacre. Heyman was a career justice lawyer who had been there through 4 Democratic administrations covering 33 years. He was in charge of the Justice Department's Criminal Division, which handles all criminal investigations. It's obvious, folks, that Mr. Heyman, an honest man, left a career position because he would not be party to another Clinton cover-up, this one Foster's murder. Why was Foster killed? We think there were 3 reasons. First, he bungled the cover-ups. Second, he knew too much. and he was showing signs of caving in. Finally, he was the perfect fall guy. He would become the hole where the documents could easily disappear. Clinton could say, quote, "Foster had the documents," unquote. In Arkansas, it was a common saying, "Get Clinton to Washington so our money and our women will be safe." Clinton has always had a hankering for women, and as a powerful politician, he has indulged that hankering to the limit. Jennifer Flowers was the most public of his many affairs. She was a former cabaret singer, a striking-looking woman. Bill met her when she was in her early 20s. He quickly made her his mistress. Bill and Jennifer were frequently seen together at social functions across Arkansas. Flowers revealed intimate details of her long-term sexual relationship with Clinton. She told when, where, and how. When prompted, she even told about Clinton's sexual prowess. Clinton betrayed his wife with this woman for 12 years. He put her on the state payroll. Of course, paying someone for a sexual relationship out of state funds directly violates state and federal law. When asked about his affair with Jennifer Flowers, Clinton hemmed and hawed, but he never, not once, ever denied it. At the same time, Clinton also had an ongoing affair with Sally Perdue, a former Miss Arkansas. She says state troopers used to bring Clinton in police cars to have sex with her. She also gives details of Bill's preferences, saying he liked to wear her black nightgown while he played the sax for her. Miss Perdue said she was later offered a cushy federal job to keep her mouth shut. That apparently was not unusual for Bill Clinton. U.S. News reported that among the controversies surrounding Clinton are that he used state funds to pay for sex with at least 4 other women besides Jennifer Flowers. Police officers say they brought women to Clinton for sex before and after he was elected president. And several Secret Service employees, Secret Service men assigned to guard the president, have resigned, ladies and gentlemen, because they didn't like being turned into pimps for both of the Clintons. Like John Kennedy, Clinton apparently did not stop his extramarital sex affairs after he was elected president. Arkansas state troopers say that as members of Governor Clinton's security staff, they were expected to set up a series of extramarital affairs and romantic adventures for him. They even say that they alerted Clinton whenever his wife was on the prowl, booked hotel rooms for his trusts, lent him unmarked police vehicles, and stood guard while he dallied in the back seat of parked police cars. The troopers say Clinton had multiple sexual encounters up until days before his inauguration. This included receiving oral sex in parking lots. He also had them deliver gifts to his girlfriends. And folks, this was not just one Arkansas state trooper, nor 2 Arkansas state troopers, but as many as 8. Did Clinton try to buy their silence? The Los Angeles Times reports there's credible evidence that 1, the troopers' allegations of sex are true, and 2, Clinton violated federal criminal statute as recently as fall of 1993. 2 of the Arkansas policemen said Clinton tried to keep them from talking to reporters by suggesting he was willing to appoint them to high-paying federal jobs. Danny Ferguson was one of these troopers. He said Clinton phoned him several times to find out what he and the other policemen were saying. Clinton told Ferguson he wanted to come in the back door and shut it down. Roger Perry, one of the 2 troopers who went public just recently, confirmed what Ferguson said about the president's calls. According to Perry, Ferguson told him Clinton offered Ferguson his choice of 2 jobs: United States Marshal in Little Rock, paying $67,000 a year, or regional director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, with a starting salary of $93,000 a year. And Clinton, of course, denies this. But he already has rewarded one of the 4 troopers, Buddy Young, with a FEMA regional directorship. According to a report in the Washington Times, Young's only qualification for the job appeared to be his success in suppressing bimbo eruptions. bimbo eruptions, which, of course, would have revealed Clinton's erections. According to Ferguson, Clinton also asked him to tell Perry that he could have anything he wanted. If the troopers' statements are true, and all the evidence says that they are, Clinton offered favors so the troopers would hold their tongues. That is in violation of a number of federal statutes, but it is totally in keeping with the character of the man we elected president, as you have discovered by listening to the previous 3 broadcasts of the Hour of the Time. On 3 different occasions, Nick Guarino interviewed 3 Arkansas state prisoners. They all related the same basic story. While trustees, in effect prisoners who had special privileges while in prison, they worked at the governor's mansion. During that time, they and other people they knew were used as couriers to escort the bag money in the high-stakes poker games involving Clinton and his cronies. As it was explained to Nick, the money was never around the poker games. The wealthy and powerful players in the poker games would buy their chips from the courier. When the game was over, they would go to a courier at a different location who would cash them out. They also told stories of obtaining women and drugs for participants in the game. Now, Nick has no way of knowing if these allegations are true, but they were in line with rumors that he heard through the years about Clinton's voracious appetites for women and gambling, and rumors that have permeated the social circles in Arkansas. One of Clinton's close friends was millionaire drug dealer Dan Lassiter. Now, I told you about the lucrative business deals Clinton gave to Lassiter. Lassiter showed his appreciation in more ways, ladies and gentlemen, than just cash. More ways than just cash. According to police files, Lassiter threw lavish parties, often with lines of cocaine, and, of course, lots of beautiful women. It's even been rumored that Clinton attended these parties. He frequently flew around the United States with Lassiter and Lassiter's private jet. Clinton claims he stopped his relationship with Lassiter when he learned of his coming drug conviction. But witnesses report Governor Clinton continued to associate with Lassiter even after he had been informed that Lassiter was under investigation for drug dealing. In 1986, Lassiter was sentenced to 30 months in prison for distributing cocaine. One of the people he distributed to was Clinton's brother, Roger. He only spent 4 months in a halfway house and 2 months in home confinement. Bill Clinton, as we have already revealed, then gave him a full pardon. Just what could Clinton be doing at the wild parties of a soon-to-be-convicted drug dealer? Just what did he and Lassiter do in Lassiter's plane as they jetted all around the United States? Remember, Clinton admits to smoking pot as a college student. What might he get from a multi-millionaire wheeler-dealer who would soon be convicted of distributing cocaine? No matter where you go in Arkansas, folks, you can find someone who has a story of Clinton's love of sex and gambling. I've talked to many people who told me about high-stake poker games and encounters Clinton had with women in hotel rooms. Nick Guarino has spoken to these same people and many more, and has discovered the same allegations. Every other month, a new person comes forward who has knowledge of Clinton's immoral escapades involving sex or money. In February 1994, still another woman spoke out. It was the same old pattern. She was a campaign worker. She was beautiful. She says Clinton aides told her Clinton wanted to speak with her in a private room. When she got there, he asked for sex. Unlike many, she refused, but like all the others, she was immediately discredited by Clinton spin doctors. Now, we're not talking about some Hollywood sex symbol or superstar athlete. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the President of the United States of America. He is the Commander-in-Chief of the world's greatest military power. He is charged with protecting the citizens of this country. He is a man who is supposed to be above corruption. If this man cannot control himself morally, what danger are we in? During the 1992 campaign, Hillary and Bill appeared on numerous TV shows, including 60 Minutes. In that interview, Bill never denied his sexual escapades. Not once, not even a hint of denial. but he did indicate all these mistakes were behind him. You may remember his sincerity. The moment was really touching. The silly, stupid little grin was there, as it always is. But we don't believe that he had any intention of stopping then or now. It was just a ruse to get elected, and that is the ultimate danger of Bill Clinton. He is completely amoral. He is a true sociopath. He will say or do anything to get what he wants. He has no conscience, no feeling, no empathy for other people. I doubt if he even understands that other people have feelings. Only in America can a poor country boy go from a dead broke political hack to a multi-millionaire and president of the United States. But Bill Clinton's is not a Horatio Alger story. He's closer to Al Capone. His story is so complex that most people lose the significance of the events that took place. As governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton and his cronies looted a savings and loan, the SBA and the Arkansas Development Bond Authority. He needed money and power to finance a bid for his ultimate goal, the presidency. He dabbled with the Central Intelligence Agency's efforts to import drugs into the United States through the airstrip at Mena, Arkansas. He wined and dined with a man who was convicted of distributing cocaine. Over 28 bodies litter the ground around Bill Clinton. People closely connected to him who have died under mysterious circumstances within just the last couple of years, folks. 3, if you will remember, during the massacre at Waco, Texas. Bill Clinton himself admitted that 3 of the BATF agents killed during the initial assault on the church known as Branch Davidian, probably by friendly fire, had been his personal bodyguards during his presidential campaign. Don't go away. There's more. Clinton set up his cronies in key positions. They arranged sham real estate deals. They inflated the value of property that was basically worthless. And they borrowed millions of dollars against those properties. Most of these deals, folks, involved very inexpensive land on which they borrowed far more than actual value. When they were done, all these projects showed enormous losses, and remarkably, all the borrowed money is gone. All, not part, folks, all the borrowed money is gone. The plan, of course, was fraudulent and illegal. It was also successful beyond Clinton's wildest dreams. As governor, Clinton held near total control of the state, the bond authority, the banking authorities, the securities commissions. He could give jobs when he needed it. He could borrow money and authorize money to be loaned to his cronies. He controlled $1 billion political plum, the unimaginable wealth of the Arkansas state bond authorities. They loaned out literally $1 billion to his associates, friends, and favored projects. Now remember, they loaned out literally $1 billion to his associates, friends, and favored projects. And we have already told you, folks, all the borrowed money is gone. Madison Guarantee was looted for $60 million or more, probably much, much more, but no one will ever really know. For all the records have disappeared, deeds have disappeared, checks have disappeared, financial records have disappeared, loans have disappeared. In the next 10 years, many bonds issued under the Clinton administration will go into default. And that $60 million figure is going to appear like a speck of sand on a California beach compared to the losses that will be experienced by those who purchased those bonds. Clinton was governor over several million people and stole millions. And if you count the bond deals as stealing, which they certainly were, billions of dollars. He's now president, ladies and gentlemen, over 260 million people. And I might remind him that we still have our guns. He controls trillions of dollars, and his pattern of lies and deceits has continued right on. NAFTA, government health care, ever higher taxes, the socialization of America's great free enterprise system are all a part of the great plan to pull this nation down and bring together their dream, this great socialist dream of a one-world totalitarian state. Clinton has just one problem, ladies and gentlemen. Just one little problem out of all the many that he faces, and that problem is he will be impeached. What the establishment press, the socialist-controlled press in this country has suppressed, I have revealed, and it can no longer be hidden. Every dirty deed he ever did in Arkansas is starting to bubble to the top of the cesspool he created, and it stinks. The filth will bury him, just as he has tried to bury it. As Whitewater continues to unfold, the important thing to keep in mind is that there will be few smoking guns. Witnesses with direct evidence will be silenced, discredited, because you stupid sheeple. Never mind. Or they'll just change their testimony. Clinton will constantly claim it wasn't him. Keep your overview, folks, about these events. Understand that except in the beginning, his name appears on nothing. No money goes directly to him. It's all disappeared. And it's disappeared into the arms for drugs. Operations of the Military Intelligence Network and the Central Intelligence Agency. Operated and controlled by the secret societies whose headquarters is just 13 blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C. They consist of the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the Supreme Council of the 33rd Degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry of the Southern Jurisdiction, B'nai B'rith, the Rosy Cross, and many others. But isn't it remarkable how everyone around Bill Clinton is involved in one dirty deal after another, all intermingled, and how directly or indirectly he and Hillary benefited from them? When Bill first became governor of Arkansas, he and Hillary had no assets whatsoever. Their net worth was basically zero. In college, Hillary was the girl that you wouldn't get caught dead dating. If you don't believe that, just look at a picture of her during those years. Bill Clinton was a poor young man backed by powerful financial interests, backed by the wealthy of the world and the intellectual elite of the universities that he attended. He was given a Rhodes Scholarship. Why? Why did this poor white trash get that kind of backing, and how did he and Hillary, the girl no one would be caught dead on a date with, how did they get to the White House? When Bill first became governor of Arkansas, remember, he and Hillary had no assets. Their net worth was zero. Even with Hillary's law earnings and even with the backing of the elite of the world, Bill Clinton had nothing. They made only a modest salary, and now only 16 years later, they both are multi-millionaires, and there's no logical way to explain it. No lawyer in Arkansas makes that much money, partner or not. And of course, Bill Clinton's salary was a pittance. Yes, folks, politics can pay. But it's time for the truth about the Clintons to come out in the open, and it's time for them to pay the piper. Clinton and Hillary are going to deny everything that I have said in this series of broadcasts, and that's how he has risen to his position of unbelievable power and money. And so I read directly from a direct challenge made to Bill Clinton by Nick Guarino. And I quote, "Bill, take a lie detector test. Answer the charges that I have brought. I only put two requirements on it. One, that the test be administered by an expert you and I both agree is impartial. And two, that I get to ask the questions. You see, I don't want you to weasel out of it." Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, if Clinton is innocent, this would prove it to the whole world. But he will never take such a test, nor will he reveal the documents to the public that could also clear him, for they would convict him, and it would show that he is not innocent. It would make him, quote, the impeached president, unquote, and I so dub him now, the impeached president. And I call upon you, Bill Clinton, to step down, do the honorable thing for once in your life, and resign from the presidency. Don't pull the presidency down with you, and don't put any more dirt in the face of the nation. If you don't do this, William Clinton, you will be the first president in American history to be formally removed from office through the impeachment proceedings, and you will go directly from the Oval Office to cell block C. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not an idle statement. This is based upon over a year of diligent research by many people. Many people. It is based upon interviews with many witnesses, acquaintances, and business partners of Bill and Hillary Clinton. It is based upon revelations made by Arkansas State Police officers and by at least 4 women who have publicly stated, with no gain to themselves, that they have been involved in sexual trysts with William Clinton. The drugs, oh yes, the drugs, lead from Mena, Arkansas to Lassiter to Clinton, through the head of his personal bodyguards, who, by the way, is no longer in that position. The investigation into the drugs at Mena, Arkansas was very tightly controlled. Very little of the results of that investigation have ever been made public. Ask Ollie North. I just received a letter from Ollie North wanting me to contribute $2,000 to his political campaign so that he can become the senator of Virginia. And I say to those of you who live in Virginia, if you elect Ollie North, then you are the biggest fools upon the face of this planet. For Bill Clinton might be in the process of destroying the nation, but he's doing it slowly in a method that might allow us to defeat it. Ollie North was preparing a plan to summarily and precipitously suspend the Constitution of the United States of America and declare martial law. He was also involved in selling arms for drugs, the drugs that were brought into this country that are destroying the youth of the nation, that are enslaving many poor people in ghetto neighborhoods, to create the inflated crime rate, to cause the sheeple to scream, to have the guns taken out of the hands of American patriots. Ollie North is a traitor. Find another conservative candidate, another candidate who is truly pledged to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Ollie North is a joke. Bill Clinton is a joke. Hillary Clinton is a joke. And you, the sheeple of the United States of America, unless you change your ways, you are the biggest joke of all. The biggest joke of all time. Of the whole history of the world, of all the fools that have ever lived, none can top the American sheeple, who have it all and are shoveling it away from them just as fast as they possibly can on the promise of some future utopia. Someone once said, "What fools these mortals be." I wonder who said that. Was that Shakespeare? What fools these mortals be. Ladies and gentlemen, form your militia units. To arms. To arms. To arms. To arms. That is what our forefathers gave us. The second article in Amendment 4 was to protect ourselves against a government run amok. And that is exactly what is happening. Constitutional government has not failed us. We have failed it. And the scum has risen directly to the top because we've been asleep all these years, and they are in control. There will be no political resolution. There will be no relief in the courts. Our duty, our responsibilities are clear. And if you haven't got the guts for it, may God have mercy on your soul, and I hope you have the guts to keep your mouth shut when you discover that slavery is no fun. Good night. God bless you, and God save the Republic.